Naruto. There is a big problem with my love life options. Chapter 41 Gravedigger. Naruto's eyes were moved, and he asked in disbelief, "What's going on? When did you two get together?" Get together. Ino didn't know what she was thinking of, and two suspicious blushes suddenly appeared on her pretty face. Naruto, if you don't know how to talk, don't say anything nonsense. Sakura's mouth twitched, and she couldn't help but say, "What do you mean by getting together? This will cause misunderstandings." Misunderstanding. Naruto blinked and scratched his head. They had no interactions before, but suddenly their relationship became so good. Isn't this just getting together? Sakura opened her mouth, wanting to explain but not knowing where to start. In the end, she could only take a deep breath and shouted angrily, "You are such an idiot. Sasuke just had dinner with me yesterday." Yi Feng explained lightly. "You guys are having dinner together." Naruto took a breath and blurted out, "Could it be that he is the person you have been dating for the past 2 days? Sakura and Ino almost vomited blood, and even Shikamaru kept shaking his head with a twitching mouth. Don't understand. They really couldn't understand the little yellow-haired boy's train of thought. His thoughts and ideas seemed to be in a different dimension from those of everyone present. Idiot. Sasuke wanted to hold back, but he couldn't in the end. "Who are you scolding, Sasuke?" Naruto instantly became furious and jumped up from his chair. "Of course whoever is the idiot should be called the idiot," Sasuke said calmly. "You bastard, I want to challenge you in a duel." "Humph, now even the last one dares to say such things." Okay, I won't punish you today. Okay, that's enough." Yi Feng suddenly spoke, helplessly, "If you really want to know the contents of this scroll, then study hard. Come to my house after school and I'll show it to you. I'll let you go this time." Naruto looked at Sasuke and said firmly, "I should be the one saying this, idiot." Sasuke glanced at him with contempt, nodded to Yi Feng, then turned and walked towards his seat. This bastard. Naruto gritted his teeth at his attitude, and Shikamaru could only comfort him like a child. "Are you going to instill your ideas into them now?" Mrs. Makoto's gentle voice sounded, with a slightly worried tone, "Isn't it a little too early? The sooner the ideological transformation is done, the better." Yi Feng smiled and said softly, "And I won't force everything on them all at once, like the test paper I gave to Sasuke. I will gradually improve their understanding of the world. This is a subtle process." "What about your date with Hinata tonight?" Kushina suddenly asked. Yi Feng was silent for a moment, then said carefully, "You didn't say you wanted to date me, you just asked if I had time in the evening." "Scumbag." Kushina snorted coldly. Yi Feng's expression was dull, he didn't understand how he became a scumbag. "Bring Hinata with me." Kushina spoke again, saying calmly, "Since you have already flirted with her, you are not allowed to give up halfway." Ellipsis. The setting sun is blood red, and dusk gradually dyes the earth. Yi Feng's cottage is located on the edge of the eastern district of Konoha. The originally secluded environment seems a bit lively today. This is my first time visiting a boy's home. It feels a bit novel. Jingye looked around at the furnishings and utensils in Yi Feng's home and said with a smile, "Do you really live alone? Isn't this place so tidy?" "Indeed, it's amazing," Sakura exclaimed in agreement. Even her own room had to be cleaned by her mother, but Yi Feng, a boy, could keep the whole house in order. "Thank you for the compliment. I just have a little obsessive-compulsive disorder." Yi Feng smiled gently, picked up a new test paper from the desk and spread it out. "Everyone, this is the content of the scroll." "Let me see." Naruto shouted as he rushed forward, then his expression froze. Elementary school student mock test paper. "What do you mean by elementary school student? Wait, what you gave to Sasuke was actually a test paper." This time it's not just Naruto. In the entire room, except for Sasuke, Shikamaru, Ino, Sakura and Hinata all looked at each other. They had made many guesses before. For example, the content of the scroll was thought to be some powerful ninjutsu or some mysterious sealed ninja tool or something like that, but unexpectedly it turned out to be just a set of test papers. Yifeng is urging Sasuke to do the test. Why does this sound so funny? I made a promise with Sasuke before. Yifeng smiled and said softly, if he can get 50 points on this test, I will personally teach him how to become stronger. 50 points. Xiaoying was stunned for a moment, then asked, what's the full score? 100. Yifeng replied. So how many points does Sasuke have now? Naruto asked with concern. Sasuke is indeed a genius. Yifeng exclaimed, and said with emotion, even if he has not learned any basics, he can still achieve a good score of 20 points. How much? Naruto couldn't hold it in anymore and laughed out loud. 20 points. Ha 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 ha, can you be called a genius with only 20 points? Even when I took the theory test, I still got 40 points. HMPH. Sasuke snorted coldly, his expression looking a little unhappy. When he went home last night and stayed up late to finish the test papers, he knew that he might not get 50 points. The reason was simple. He had never heard of most of the questions. But these questions were not the kind of weird questions that were deliberately difficult. On the contrary, they looked very basic. But these basics made him rack his brains. I finally wrote down the answer, but when I checked it, I found that I seemed to be wrong, but I had no idea where I was wrong. I just had a vague feeling that I had written it wrong. As predicted, this score proved his guess. Is this true? Sakura was stunned and asked in disbelief, even Sasuke-kun only scored 20 points. It's really scary. Ino took a breath, rubbed her arms and said, although I haven't seen the question yet, I'm already getting goosebumps. Let me do it. Naruto volunteered, shouting, I'm going to score 50 points today and show that arrogant guy what a true genius is. I want to try it too. Hinata, who seemed to be invisible among the crowd, mustered up the courage to raise her hand. Sure. Yifeng didn't stop him, and spread the test paper on the table with a smile. Take your time to try, I'll go cook first. Everyone gathered around and began to discuss the questions in the test paper. Only Shikamaru looked at it and turned pale. He stood up and chased Yifeng to the kitchen. He came close to him and asked in a low voice, Yifeng, what on earth are you going to do with this? Yifeng looked at him in puzzlement. Don't play dumb with me, you bastard. Shikamaru carefully glanced outside the door and said in a low voice, analyzing the nature of ninjas and breaking down the structure of the ninja world, this is not as simple as a student's test paper, right? Do you want to be a rebel ninja, Yifeng? Rebel ninja. Yifeng's mouth curled up, revealing a sarcastic smile on his face as he said, that's a really harsh accusation, Shikamaru. I'm just trying to guide people to think correctly, but in your eyes, is that a betrayal of Konoha? You should know very well that Konoha cannot tolerate your so-called correct ideas. Shikamaru took a breath. But someone has to do it in the end. Lies can never replace the truth. Yifeng stood by the stove with an apron on, dicing the prepared ingredients on the chopping board. You want to be the savior of this world. No, more precisely, it should be called a gravedigger. The night is filled with darkness and dotted with stars. The classmates who came to visit said goodbye to Yifeng one after another and started their journey back home. This is incredible. Ino pulled her best friend's sleeve and whispered, I didn't expect Yifeng-jun to cook so deliciously. He is simply an all-round super high-quality stock. Yeah. Sakura nodded in agreement, then sighed and said, too bad, I've already been on several blind dates. What does that matter? Ino glanced at her with burning eyes, raised her delicate eyebrows and said, can those blind date women compare to my childhood sweetheart? Ching, childhood sweetheart. Sakura was stunned. No, ladies. We didn't drink any alcohol when we were having dinner just now, how could you get yourself drunk like this? Where did this childhood sweetheart come from? Have we been in the same class since first grade? Ino curved her lips and smiled, that means we grew up together, so why can't we be childhood sweethearts? Your definition of childhood sweetheart is too sloppy, isn't it? Sakura couldn't help but complain, please wake up. You barely even talked to him in your first 2 years at the ninja school. Sakura, are we good friends? Ino asked solemnly. Yes, yes. Sakura was stunned by her change of attitude and nodded quickly. Then do you support me in pursuing Yifeng-jun? Ino put his hand on her shoulder and said in a seductive tone, this way you can concentrate on pursuing Sasuke, and no one will stop you. Don't try to fool me. Xiaoying reacted and slapped the other person's hand on her shoulder, saying helplessly, it's useless even if I support you in this matter. I haven't even said a few words to classmate Yifeng. It will be useful. Ino showed a plan on his face and said, when the time comes, you have to accompany me and visit his house frequently in the name of studying. Ah, I want to go too. Sakura pointed at her nose and said in surprise, but I really can't understand those test papers. I'm so confused. I bet Sasuke will go there often too. Ino raised her eyebrows again and said meaningfully, Sakura-san, you don't want us to exclude you from our future circle, do you? You. The corners of Sakura's mouth twitched violently, and her face was full of black lines. The other side. We'll stop here. As they walked to the fork in the street, Hinata saluted carefully and said, thank you for sending me off. Naruto-kun, Shikamaru-kun. It's okay. Yifeng specifically told me to do this. Naruto winked and said meaningfully. Yeah. Hinata's pretty face turned red immediately, and she ran away from the street. It's time for us to go back, Naruto. Shikamaru glanced at the Hyuga maid who was standing at the corner waiting for Hinata, and said lightly. Hee, today is the best dinner I've ever had. And it was with Sakura. Naruto held the back of his head with his hands with a playful smile, and sighed, it would be even more perfect if that arrogant guy Sasuke wasn't here. Shikamaru didn't respond, seeming a little worried. Hey, Shikamaru. Naruto obviously noticed his abnormality and asked with a puzzled expression, what's wrong with you? Naruto, Yifeng. Shikamaru paused halfway through his sentence, shook his head gently and said, no, nothing. Let's separate here, see you tomorrow. What are you doing? You're so mysterious. Naruto scratched his head as he watched him leave, then turned and walked towards his home. Konoha's underground base. Yifeng, Makoto and Kushina were sitting next to the monitor, taking in the entire scene. It seems that my prediction is correct. Shikamaru won't tell the secret. Yifeng said with a slight smile on his face. Is it possible that Naruto is too stupid to say anything? Kushina crossed her arms and said calmly, so, I still have reservations. Mrs. Makoto was speechless and said, Kushina, isn't it a bit? An idiot is an idiot. I'm being realistic. Kushina spread her hands and sighed, I've been thinking about who this idiot takes after, but I still don't have an answer. I don't think Naruto is a fool, he's just slow in some aspects. Yifeng made a fair comment. Hayu is here. Mrs. Masaka pointed at the monitor and saw Weiyu, dressed in a rude outfit, standing outside Yifeng's cabin. Come in, Ms. Weiyu. Yifeng did not hide anything from the people he recognized as his own and spoke directly to the monitor. Click. The door of the cabin opened automatically, and when Weiyu entered the room, he saw the entrance to the underground. Go down the stairs and enter the stronghold. Weiyu was stunned, obviously shocked by his leader's generosity. The other party had created such a big scene under Konoha, but the Konoha high-level officials knew nothing about it. Let's go, we're going to see Danzo. Yifeng walked out of the monitoring room and appeared in front of Weiyu. Kushina and Makoto had already crawled back into Yifeng's body, and the two ladies weren't too keen on seeing anyone else just yet. Weiyu nodded, not surprised that the boy in front of her knew her purpose. To Weiyu now, her leader was simply a god. He was omniscient and omnipotent. Root base. Lord Danzo. Yifeng stood in front of Danzo and bowed respectfully. Shaolin Yifeng, what do you think of that brat from the Uchiha family? Danzo asked condescendingly with drooping eyelids. Sasuke is very good. Yifeng lowered his head and said without any sadness or joy, I believe that in time, he will become a very great ninja. HMPH, it seems you think highly of him. Danzo snorted and said indifferently, what if I tell you that he will be a threat to Konoha in the future? I will deal with him myself. Yifeng said solemnly. Very good. I know you won't let me down. Danzo nodded in satisfaction and said in a slow tone, but before that, you need to do another thing first. Please give your orders, Master Danzo. Itachi Uchiha, the S-rank rebel ninja of Konoha, is currently hiding in the Akatsuki base in the Hidden Rain village. I have a way for you to gain his trust and find an opportunity to kill him. You can go now. Not long after Yifeng left, Danzo's eyes suddenly flashed with a blood-red light. But when he waved his right arm, the bandages wrapped around it broke one after another, revealing the horrifying scene inside. His entire arm was covered with milky white bone material, with a row of sharp bone spurs standing in the middle, making it look extremely hideous. Congratulations, Lord Danzo, the duration of your super form has become longer again. Weiyu, who was standing under the podium, exclaimed. Not enough, this is far from enough. Danzo said this, but his expression looked very proud. Go inform Hanzo of the salamander and ask him to prepare 10 more of these potions for me. Yes. Weiyu nodded respectfully. Very good, their wave country will have another considerable income. As Danzo sick, Kushina couldn't help but complain as she walked home, he's so anxious to kill all the Uchiha. Did the Uchiha dig up his ancestral graves? Digging ancestral graves. The corners of Yifeng's mouth twitched slightly. This red-haired lady is getting better and better at telling jokes. Who knows what shocking things she will say in the future. He was quite emotional in his heart, but said calmly on the surface, he has been eroded by the void now, and he will become more and more extreme in the future. Don't let him die so early, Yifeng-kun. Mrs. Masaki suddenly spoke, her voice no longer as gentle as usual. That would be too easy for him. No mother would remain gentle if she heard someone was going to kill her child. Uchiha Makoto was already very restrained, even trying desperately to suppress her murderous intent. Okay. Yifeng didn't say much, but simply agreed. By the way, why did Danzo know that Itachi was in the Akatsuki organization? Kushina asked curiously. Of course Itachi told him himself. Yifeng smiled slightly and said, Sister, you won't forget, right? Itachi was a spy who volunteered to be planted in the Akatsuki organization. And his direct superior is most likely Danzo. Otherwise, how can Danzo let me gain Itachi's trust? Kushina took a deep breath and said angrily, this bastard Danzo is a real rookie. He specifically targets people who are loyal to Konoha. The morning breeze blows and white clouds float. Ninja school classroom. Several people who had attended the dinner at Yifeng's house yesterday spontaneously gathered around him and listened attentively as he explained the various key points on the test paper and the mistakes they had made. The explanation was simple and humorous, and everyone showed surprised expressions from time to time. Their actions naturally attracted the attention of other students, but due to the tyranny of Yifeng, the top student in the grade, they could only look on curiously from the outside. Ha 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 ha. I already know them all. Naruto suddenly let out a cry of surprise, which frightened the people around him. Let's do it again tonight. I will definitely get a higher score than that arrogant Sasuke. Idiot. Sasuke was too lazy to pay attention to him. He looked at Yifeng and said, if I'm not mistaken, you should change the topic tonight, right? Huh. Naruto immediately wilted, staring and saying, why do we have to change? It doesn't make sense. There is no free lunch in the world. Even a fool knows this. Sasuke looked at Naruto meaningfully. What do you mean? Naruto was stunned for a moment, frowned and said, you bastard, how dare you laugh at me for being a fool? Is stating the facts considered mockery? Sasuke snorted. You. Naruto-kun, you are being so noisy and it's not a good idea to be so noisy. Ino interrupted Naruto's next words and whispered, it's Teacher Yifeng's teaching time now. Teacher Yifeng. Naruto blinked and asked in surprise, how did you become a teacher out of nowhere? Since we are learning the knowledge taught by Yifeng-jun, it is normal to call him teacher, right? Ino looked around and said as a matter of course, besides, don't you think Yifeng-jun is much better than most ninja school teachers? That's right. Sakura nodded in agreement and said softly, the theoretical lessons taught by the teachers at the ninja school are always confusing and take a long time to understand. But Yifeng's explanations don't give that feeling. Just a few words can make people suddenly understand. When Ino heard this, she gave her best friend a look of praise, saying that this supporting role was done well. I also think Yifeng Jun taught very well, Hinata said weakly with a red face. See, now most of us have reached a consensus. Ino smiled and said proudly, as a member of the class reunion, I declare that the title of Teacher Yifeng is settled. What do you mean by most people? It's obviously just you three. Naruto didn't dare to refute him in person, but just muttered softly. Gee, what is a class reunion? Sakura asked in astonishment. What kind of new organization is this? She has never heard of it. Since we are all receiving the instruction of Teacher Yifeng, we should give our small group a resounding name. Ino raised her head and said, Classmates reunion, don't you think it's appropriate? This girl is very interested. Mrs. Makoto smiled as she watched this scene and asked, does she like studying so much? I think she has other intentions. Kushina snorted lightly, and said with a pointed expression, Teacher Yifeng, what do you think? Yifeng took a breath and was about to change the subject when a golden options interface suddenly popped up in front of him. Open black lens bracket choose. Close black lens bracket. 1. Make the best of a bad situation. Hold Yamanaka Ino's hand and perform a song, Love and Friendship are worth 1,000 gold. 2. Compensate the jealous wife. Summon Kushina and show your affection in public. 3. Show her something powerful. Use memory transfer to force your masterpiece from 2 years ago into her. What the hell are you? Yifeng really wanted to curse at this time. These are all 8 checkboxes, so toxic. Love and friendship are worth 1,000 gold. Showing affection in public with a kiss. A masterpiece from 2 years ago. Damn, each one is more shameful than the other. Is this an option that a human could come up with? This is a piece of shit system, it's really a piece of shit. Forget it. Rather than sharing the pain with others, it is better to bear it all by yourself. Yifeng took a deep breath and started the memory transmission to the red-haired lady in his body. Kushina was waiting for his answer when she was startled. Her eyes widened and her mouth gradually opened. An extra piece of information appeared in her mind. To be more precise, it is a literary work. Hashirama returns. He discovers his wife Uchiha Madara living in a doghouse, and in anger he summons 100,000 white Zetsu. Puff. After reading this, Kushina almost spit out a mouthful of salt soda. She was stunned. You guys who are into literary creation can actually do this. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations on obtaining 40 years of chakra energy. Close black lens bracket. Yifeng was not happy at all when the reward prompt popped up in front of him. He was struggling with how to explain to Mrs. Kushina that he was not a homosexual. At this moment, in the Hidden Mist village, the 4th Mizukage Yagura sat in his office chair with a dull expression, like a puppet. The masked man in a black robe standing behind him was holding a document in his hand and asked in a puzzled tone, Joint Chunin exam. What do those old guys in Konoha want to do? It's not just Karigakure, Iwagakure, Kumogakure, Sandagakure and even some small ninja villages have also received invitations. Standing opposite the masked man, the pitcher plant-like white Zetsu grinned. It even includes Nagato and his Raingakure. That means almost all ninja villages have received their invitations. The masked man narrowed his eyes and fell into deep thought. According to my understanding, Black Zetsu, who was attached to White Zetsu, said in a hoarse voice with a look of sneer on his face, Sarutobi Hiruzen may want to use the Chunin exam as a link to develop good relations with other ninja villages. Naive. The masked man was silent for a moment and made a cold comment. Indeed, it is a bit too naive. Black Zetsu nodded in agreement and said, the 3rd Hokage is no longer the ninja hero of the past. His eyes are filled with only desire and prayer for peace. So he certainly could not have expected that Onoki of the Iwagakure village and Rasa of the Sand village had secretly formed an alliance. They were preparing to launch a fatal attack on Konoha on the day of the Chunin exam. HMPH, I think that scene would probably be quite interesting. The masked man sneered. More than that. White Zetsu added, his tone jumping. Although Eye of the Hidden Cloud Village rejected Konoha's invitation on the surface, they have actually begun to prepare a strategy for invasion. Tisk tisk tisk, it looks like Sarutobi Hiruzen is going to have a headache then. Black Zetsu smacked his lips and chuckled, no. To be more precise, it's even a question whether he can survive the Chunin exams. According to the information passed on by the clone, Konoha is now in a mess. White Zetsu spoke again, gloating. Danzo has been isolated by other Konoha high-level officials and has begun to take extreme measures. Take an unconventional approach. The masked man's scarlet right eye looked at Baiju. Oh. White Zetsu enjoyed this kind of attention and said with a smile. He even gave orders to his subordinates to take action against the brothers Itachi and Sasuke. What? The masked man was stunned and asked in astonishment. Danzo is planning to attack the two brothers Itachi and Sasuke. Confused. The masked man was really confused at this moment. Where on earth did Danzo get the confidence to do such a thing? Even he was full of fear towards Uchiha Itachi. This young man's strength and combat IQ were even not inferior to his former teacher. Yes, Danzo has recently recruited a capable subordinate. White Zetsu grinned with a very happy expression on his face. I'm afraid it's because of this person that he became arrogant. Oh. The masked man narrowed his scarlet right eye, but he didn't really care. In his opinion, no matter what kind of subordinates Danzo had, they would never be a match for Itachi. The elder of Konoha was clearly ordering his subordinates to die, but that was in line with his character. That person's name is Zhaolin Yifeng, and he's only 10 years old. Baiju was still showing off his exclusive information, grinning and saying, but it's incredible, he actually created such a terrifying illusion at this age. Illusion. The masked man was stunned for a moment, then said calmly, don't worry about it. This kid is dead. Performing illusions in front of the Mangekyo Sharingan. It wasn't to maintain his character, he really wanted to laugh out loud. The night was dark. How despicable. Those guys from Kusagakure village are so cruel. Just for an unnecessary war, they actually killed the ninjas in their own village to such an extent. Naruto's angry voice was heard in Yifeng's little house. Oh, so scary. Sakura took a deep breath and said with a moved expression, so such a terrible thing is happening in the ninja village outside. Terrible things don't just happen in other ninja villages. Ino patted her best friend's shoulder and sighed, the same thing happened in our Konoha. As he spoke, he glanced meaningfully at Sasuke who was leaning against the wall. I'm telling you this true story for our study assignment today. Yi Feng, who was wearing black framed glasses, sat at the long table and said in a gentle voice, how do you think we can avoid this kind of thing from happening? Beat up those guys with bad intentions. Naruto was the first to speak, shouting, beat them until they are scared, and then make them promise not to do such things again. Promises are useless, right? Sakura frowned and whispered, even if they temporarily succumb to your force, what if they continue to do it after you leave? We should send Rina and her daughter to a safe place. Ino pondered for a moment and expressed her opinion. Hide their identities so that they will not be coveted by others. Humph, that's just a temporary solution. Sasuke snorted and said lightly, it can't change the essence of the problem. What do you think, Sasuke-kun? Sakura asked with a burning gaze. Except for that mother and daughter, kill all the ninjas in Kusagakure. Sasuke said with cold eyes and arrogant expression. Kill them all. Xiaoying's expression suddenly became a little stiff, and she said intermittently, isn't this too extreme? Long-term illness requires heavy medicine. The village that treats human life as recovery medicine is obviously beyond help. Sasuke glanced at her and said in a cold voice, letting them live in the world will only continue to harm others. I don't agree. Naruto slammed the table, stood up and said, if you kill people at will like this, what's the difference between you and those bastards in Kusagakure? The difference is that I'm on the side of justice, Sasuke said calmly. Bullshit, this is not justice at all. Naruto retorted. Hinata, who was sitting on the side, was obviously frightened by the scene, but her first reaction was not to escape, but to mediate the dispute between the two. Unfortunately, the voice was too soft and neither Naruto nor Sasuke heard it. "Why don't you listen to Teacher Yifeng's opinion?" Shikamaru suddenly spoke up, interrupting the two people's tense conversation. "Since it is a question raised by Teacher Yifeng, there should be a standard answer, right?" As he spoke, he looked meaningfully at the boy with glasses. Shikamaru is now increasingly certain that his good brother is planning something big behind his back. Not only that, the other party also wanted to involve the students present. This made Shikamaru feel complicated and hesitant. Should he follow up or stay away from this vortex completely? Shikamaru doesn't have an answer yet. So he wanted to get more information from Yifeng so that he could make a judgment. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone in the room immediately turned their eyes to Yifeng, with expectant expressions on their faces. Unfortunately, there is no so-called standard answer to this question. Yifeng smiled and said softly, "Everyone has different thoughts and values, so the solutions they come up with are also different. In other words, your answers can actually be considered answers. All is okay." Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. "It's just an answer, but it's not the best solution in your mind, right?" Shikamaru stared at his friend, with a serious expression on his face that he had never had before. "Teacher Yifeng, I want to know what the best solution in your mind is. Break down the old Kusagaker system and build a new Kusagaker system." Yifeng's lips curved slightly, and he said calmly, "These two things are a whole, and must go hand in hand. Neither is indispensable. Break the old system and build a new one." Everyone murmured this sentence, thinking deeply. Shikamaru quickly understood the deep meaning of this, and with a complicated look in his eyes, he took a breath and said, "The path you chose is destined to be a sea of blood and corpses. Is it worth it? Death is not something to be feared. The real horror is not knowing why you died." Yifeng uttered softly, his eyes behind the transparent lenses seemed to be ablaze with fire. "Shikamaru, I think you should understand this." Shikamaru fell silent, his eyes conflicted. "Let's stop here today, everyone." Yifeng looked at the students in the room and said with a gentle smile, "I have prepared some written materials for you, I hope it can answer your current doubts." The so-called written materials are actually part of the textbooks of Wave Country compiled by Yifeng, which include the analysis of the structure of the ninja world, the origin of ninjas, and the nature of daimyo and nobles. Everyone received the books and said goodbye one after another. Sasuke stayed and looked at Yifeng with complicated eyes and said, "What you just said is not just directed at the Kusanagi, right?" Although he was not as sharp-minded as Shikamaru, the hedgehog-haired boy was also a smart man. With a little thought, he understood the deeper meaning of Yifeng's words. Indeed, the backward old system is a common phenomenon in the ninja world. Yifeng did not shy away from saying it, the Kusagaker ninjas have it, and so do other ninja villages. "So, are you planning to make an enemy of the entire ninja world?" Sasuke took a breath and spoke in a low voice. "You are wrong, Sasuke-kun." Yifeng's mouth curled up, and he smiled gently. "Those oppressors who follow and maintain the old system do not actually represent the entire ninja world. They are just good at disguising themselves. They disguise their own interests as the interests of the entire ninja world, but in fact they are persecuting and enslaving the lower classes." Sasuke said nothing more, lost in thought. "Sasuke, I have an old friend here who has always wanted to meet you." Yifeng walked to the cupboard and gently tapped the wall beside him. Click. Under Sasuke's surprised and stunned gaze, the floor was split open to reveal a dark passage. This is. "Please go in, she is inside." Sasuke swallowed, his face filled with shock. It was not until today that he realized how secretive his peer was. He actually built a secret base under his own house. This kind of thing would definitely not be allowed by the Konoha high-level officials. Could it be that they didn't realize it at all? Also, who is that old friend who wants to see me? Sasuke was curious, but also nervous. I should have discovered Yifeng's hidden thoughts and secrets now. Will he be silenced? Or is this a trap? Never mind. Sasuke took a deep breath and walked down the stairs. At this point, retreating would only make the other party look down on him. For the glory of the Uchiha clan, he would hold his head high even if he died. Unexpected. The environment below was not as dark as Sasuke had originally imagined, but as bright as day. Walking through the long corridor, you can see all kinds of sci-fi research equipment placed in the compartments on both sides. At the end, a huge platform supported by dozens of pillars appeared in Sasuke's eyes. A familiar figure appeared. She had long black hair and wore a dazzling black gauze dress. She turned around slowly and gave Sasuke a gentle smile. "Long time no see, little Sasuke." "Mom, Mom." Sasuke's pupils dilated and he shouted with an emotional face. Now Makoto has got what she wanted. Looking at the scene of the Uchiha mother and son interacting not far away, Kushina sighed softly. "If you want, you can." Yi Feng stopped writing and looked at her. "Forget it, my silly boy still hasn't figured it out." Kushina shook her head and said helplessly, "There is no practical significance in recognizing each other, and I'm afraid he will make my blood pressure soar." "It's not impossible. Given Naruto's unexpected personality, there is a high probability that the heartwarming reunion between mother and son will take an unpredictable turn." But Yi Feng felt that this was not the main reason. The key point is that the red-haired lady felt that she owed something to her children and couldn't get over it. Even though Naruto's childhood suffering was not caused by her, but was deliberately created by the current Konoha high-level officials, as a mother, Kushina still felt guilty for not being able to give her child a happy childhood. Yi Feng did not try to comfort or explain this, and he picked up his pen and plunged into the document in front of him again. In this kind of situation, other people's comfort is meaningless, and Kushina still has to rely on herself to get out of it. Just as Yi Feng was writing furiously, a foot as white as jade rested on his elbow. With a stunned expression, Yi Feng looked at the owner of the foot. A certain red-haired lady, however, seemed to be indifferent and turned her face away, not looking at him. Yi Feng raised an eyebrow, picked up Kushina's ankle and put it on the table next to him. But before he could continue working, the foot was on his elbow again. "Sister, what's the matter?" Yi Feng asked helplessly. Kushina ignored him completely and even picked up a book to read. Yi Feng was so upset that he stretched out his index finger and poked the sole of Kushina's foot. The 5 toes curled up cutely, but still remained strong and did not give in. Okay, you're forcing me to use my trump card, right? Madam, you may have never seen what a pervert is." Yi Feng was about to put his mouth close to the ice cream and pretend to eat it. "Hey, this guy is here again." Kushina put down the book in her hand and pointed at the monitor. In the picture, a sneaky white figure appeared in Yi Feng's hut, looking around quietly. When he found no one, he immediately showed a happy expression on his face, and ran into the bathroom with his back bent. 10 seconds later, he walked out again with a frustrated look on his face. "What's wrong with this white Zetsu?" Kushina frowned, looking confused. "Why does he look so lost every time he comes out of your bathroom? What is he looking for?" "That's right. This sneaky figure is none other than Bai Zetsu." Yi Feng had discovered it when it first appeared around Danzo. But Yi Feng did not make it public, nor did he capture the white Zetsu. Instead, he kept observing its movements with a surveillance camera. Until the last few days, this white Zetsu had clearly turned its attention to Yi Feng, frequently going in and out of his house, especially his bathroom, which was a daily check-in spot. This operation really confused Kushina. "Is it possible that it is looking for a defense?" Yi Feng said with a serious expression. "Have you forgotten how it behaves in front of Obito and Uchiha Madara? It talks about poop all the time." "It seems so." But Kushina still couldn't understand. Running to someone else's bathroom to defend her thesis was really beyond her understanding. "Interesting, it seems to be interested in the books I wrote." Bai Zetsu in the monitor seemed to be frustrated for a moment because he couldn't find the defense paper, but soon he was attracted by a book on the bookshelf. He found it with ease, sat down on the chair and started to study. "Let's go, let's ask it what it thinks after reading the book." Yi Feng patted Kushina's smooth instep and stood up. In the hut. The white Zetsu clone was completely immersed in the truths explained in the book and didn't notice that there were two more people behind him. Open black lens bracket. Human beings are not abstract independent individuals, but the sum of all social relations. Close black lens bracket. Based on this theory, even some non-human species, as long as they have human consciousness, thinking and emotions, they can be called humans. They have human rights, and are also objects that need to be liberated. They should not be imprisoned and used as tools by the oppressors. After reading the last sentence, White Zetsu's clone suddenly felt like crying. The previous confusion suddenly woke me up at this moment. That's right. It should be a human. A human, with human rights. But Uchiha Obito and White Zetsu's original body constantly exploit it, requiring it to run around collecting intelligence every day. Even the time it can observe human poop is limited. The previous White Zetsu clone didn't think there was anything wrong with this. But now, it just wants to rush to Obito and the main body and say, no. Go to hell, I won't serve you anymore. Why didn't I realize this earlier? The White Zetsu clone wiped away his non-existent tears and sighed softly. A hand reached out from behind it and handed it a tissue. Thank you. The White Zetsu clone took the tissue and wiped his face, then suddenly stopped. He turned his head stiffly like a machine, and the boy wearing black framed glasses came into view. Subconsciously, the White Zetsu clone wanted to burrow into the ground and escape. An extremely terrifying feeling of oppression suddenly descended upon it, confining its entire body to the spot. Nice to meet you, Mr. White Zetsu. In Bai Zetsu's sight, the only thing that could be seen on the boy's face was his glasses flashing silver light, while he himself was in darkness. Wrong. To be more precise, the boy is the darkness itself. I'm curious. Yi Feng said softly, do you have a name? 007. The White Zetsu clone felt every cell in its body trembling. Even Uchiha Madara, whom it once served, had never felt this kind of desperate panic. I am the seventh clone born from the original body. I see, White Zetsu 007. Yi Feng nodded gently and said calmly, please tell me, are you willing to join us to save your compatriots? The White Zetsu clone felt the pressure around him suddenly dissipate, and joy appeared on his face. I can really do this. Of course. Yi Feng nodded decisively, and said with a smile as warm as the spring breeze, we welcome everyone who shares the same ideals. Master Leader. White Zetsu 007 was filled with joy at having found his organization, but at this moment he changed the subject and said, can I watch you poop every day? The smile on Yi Feng's face suddenly disappeared, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. The smile now shifted to Kushina's face, and the red-haired lady urged loudly, promise it, quickly agree to it. As a leader, how can you ignore such a small request from your comrades? Comrade 007, there is a small task that you need to complete now. Yi Feng directly used the method of changing the subject. Fortunately, White Zetsu 007 is very motivated. When he heard there was a mission, he immediately patted his chest and promised to complete it, then happily went into the ground. After a while, the entrance to the underground passage opened again. Shaolin Yi Feng, you bastard. With a dark face, Sasuke walked out of the passage and came to Yi Feng. He stretched out his hand as if to strangle him, but finally stopped his action. He took a deep breath and gritted his teeth and said, you will take care of my mother in the future. As soon as he finished speaking, he slammed the door and left. Yi Feng stood there stupidly, his face full of confusion. No, what's going on? So, what did you tell your son? In the underground laboratory, Kushina looked at her best friend in a black gauze dress and said curiously, he is so angry that he wants to strangle the little bastard to death. I'm just telling the truth. Mrs. Makoto blinked and glanced to the side. I didn't expect little Sasuke to react so strongly. It's really strange. Haha, tell me the truth. Kushina noticed that her best friend's expression was a little unnatural, and narrowed her eyes. Mrs. Makoto, have you noticed that you are a green tea now? Of course, she learned the word, green tea, from Yi Feng. She felt that it was very appropriate to describe the woman in front of her. Is that so? Mrs. Makoto pointed her finger at her lower lip and tilted her head. Kushina sneered and said, if you jump into the Nanga River to take a bath like this, everyone in Konoha will be able to drink pure Tigenian. PFF'd. Mrs. Makoto couldn't help but laughed out loud. You've really been led astray by that little bastard of yours. Don't change the subject, what on earth did you say? Kushina put her hands on the other's shoulders and said sincerely, we are good friends, right? You were planning to hide it from me. I'm telling you the truth, from the time I was reborn into the impure world to the time I was raised in the soul-containing pearl. Mrs. Makoto blushed and whispered, it's just that little Sasuke seems to have misunderstood the process I described. He thought that Yi Fengjun and I had already. Kushina sucked in a breath of cold air, her eyes widened as she said, how on earth did you explain this to make him misunderstand to this extent? And it's impossible for that little bastard to be so old. Wait, you didn't deliberately induce Sasuke to suspect it. She stared at her best friend, her brows slightly furrowed. How is that possible? Do you think I look like that kind of person? Mrs. Makoto pouted and pretended to be angry. I don't think so. Kushina was silent for a moment, then said coldly, but you act so hypocritically that my suspicion has skyrocketed. No. Then why don't you just look me in the eye? Okay, you two are meeting your family, and your son, right? What? Kushina, you're overthinking it. Mrs. Makoto's expression suddenly became a little unnatural. Am I overthinking? Kushina grinned and gritted her teeth. Some people appear to be gentle ladies on the surface, but they actually play tricks behind the scenes. I'm dead, but I'm still being backstabbed by my best friend. Obviously, I was here first. How is that possible? Do you think I look like that kind of person? Mrs. Makoto pouted and pretended to be angry. Originally, it's not like that. Kushina's mouth twitched, and she said in a cold voice, but you act so hypocritically, which makes my suspicion soar. Okay, you are a newlywed couple meeting their family, meeting their son, right? Well, Kushina, you're overthinking it. Mrs. Makoto's expression suddenly became a little unnatural. Am I overthinking? Kushina grinned and snorted. Some people appear to be gentle ladies on the surface, but they actually play around in private. I'm dead, but I'm still being backstabbed by my best friend. Obviously, I was here first. Mrs. Makoto felt that her best friend seemed to be a little angry, so she was about to apologize. But she didn't expect that the other party suddenly changed the subject and asked, how are you going to compensate me? You hurt me so much, don't you need compensation? Mrs. Makoto suddenly realized that she seemed to have fallen into a trap. This best friend in front of her had already begun to learn how to play tricks to deceive people. But now that things have come to this, she can only bite the bullet and say, okay, what compensation do you want? The next morning. Wake up, Master Yifeng. Yifeng was awakened by a gentle female voice while he was still drowsy. When he opened his eyes, he saw Uchiha Makoto, who was wearing a maid outfit and blushing, sitting on him. He supported his chest with his hands and stammered, do you want to take a bath first, or eat me first? Hiss. This scene stimulated Yi Feng so much that he almost jumped up from the bed. He said with a dull face, Mrs. Makoto, what are you doing? Master Yifeng, you have to answer first. Mrs. Masaki seemed to be trying hard to suppress her shyness, and her head was about to steam. Then I'd better take a shower first. Yi Feng realized that something was wrong and chose a simple option. Mrs. Makoto heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders, and turned into light and entered Yi Feng's body. Before Yi Feng could figure out what was going on, he could hear Kushina's unbridled laughter in his heart. Ha 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 ha, Makoto, you're so good. This maid dress I made with spirit particles really suits you. Shut up, your compensation is complete. Mrs. Makoto's angry voice rang out. What compensation? Children should not ask about adult matters. Yi Feng tried to join in the conversation, but was ruthlessly rejected by Kushina. Fine. Yi Feng curled his lips, got dressed and went to wash up. I'm going to meet your eldest son today. Kushina's voice sounded again in the Soul Pearl, and she said in a teasing tone, how about we have history repeat itself? I told you to shut up. Mrs. Makoto seemed even more ashamed and angry. Yifeng could even imagine what she looked like at the moment. Mrs. Wenwan with a blushing face is truly a wonderful sight. At this time in the Hidden Rain village, outside the Akatsuki base. Danzo wants to kill me. Uchiha Itachi, wearing a scratched Konoha forehead guard and a black robe with red clouds, frowned as he looked at the masked man in front of him. Not only does he want to kill you, he also plans to attack your brother. The masked man stood on the steps beside Itachi and said indifferently, the one who took this order as his new subordinate, a very remarkable young man. A hint of coldness flashed in Itachi's eyes. Sasuke was his biggest Achilles heel. But he did not let his anger get the better of him. Instead, he said calmly, I don't think Danzo has any motive to kill me, but I still appreciate your reminder. Turn around and prepare to leave. You should have received a message from Danzo, right? The masked man did not stop him from leaving, but said in a calm tone, the contact person's name is Zhaolin Yifeng, and he is the killer he used to deal with you. Itachi stopped walking. It was true that he had received a message from Danzo, and the message did say that someone would come to the Hidden Rain village to meet him. So, that guy Danzo really wants to kill him. If they just wanted to kill him, Itachi had no idea. He was confident that he could handle a mere assassin. But if this old guy really wants to attack Sasuke, Itachi will have no choice but to fight to the death. Of course. The premise of all this is that what the masked man says is true. Itachi didn't trust this secretive guy at all. In his mind, this guy was even more dangerous than Danzo. It's just that they still have a cooperative relationship for the time being, so they haven't torn their relationships apart. The current situation seemed a bit confusing, but Itachi felt that it was not a big problem. As long as he met with the contact person, everything would be clear. Crash. Pieces of white paper falling from the sky interrupted Itachi's thoughts. Xiaonan, who was also wearing a black robe with red clouds, showed up. His light golden pupils glanced at the two people present and said indifferently, Pain wants to hold an emergency meeting and invites you two to meet up at the base. An emergency meeting? The masked man asked in confusion. A new member has arrived in the Akatsuki organization. Conan said lightly. Are there new people? Not only the masked man, but Itachi was a little bit nervous now. He had just summoned Orochimaru 2 days ago, and now there was another one. It was an invitation from Pain himself, Conan explained. Huh. The masked man narrowed his scarlet right eye and asked in confusion, who on earth could interest the leader of the Akatsuki organization? My name is Zhaolin Yifeng. Xiaonan did not hide it and gave the name directly. Zhaolin Yifeng. Uchiha Itachi frowned slightly. Why does it feel a little familiar? And many more. His eyes suddenly turned to the masked man beside him. Isn't this the subordinate of Danzo that he just mentioned? How come he was invited by Pain to join the Akatsuki organization now? The masked man himself was also confused. What the hell is going on? The root members of Konoha were invited to join Akatsuki. Is Nagato so sneaky now that he's even trying to steal the members of the group? Something is wrong. The masked man pondered for a moment and felt that this matter was a bit too fantastic. Kobayashi Yifeng is a member of the Konoha root and a subordinate valued by Danzo. How did Nagato get in touch with him? Is there a conspiracy here? Is Danzo targeting Akatsuki? He looked at Xiaonan across from him and said in a low voice, according to the information I got, the identity of this new member seems to be not simple. How did Pain know him? In the land of waves. Xiaonan didn't seem surprised that he would have such a question, and answered briefly, we received a commission from the land of waves some time ago, and that's how we got to know Zhaolin Yifeng. This was half true and half false. In fact, she was the only one who accepted the commission at that time. The land of waves. The masked man narrowed his eyes. I know what you're worried about. Zhaolin Yifeng is not Danzo's man. Xiaonan said calmly, without any sadness or joy, On the contrary, he and Danzo have irreconcilable conflicts. His teacher at the Konoha orphanage, Yakushi Nono, was killed by Danzo. That's it. The masked man nodded suddenly. A young boy who wanted to avenge his teacher joined the enemy camp and went undercover. While carrying out the mission, he was discovered by Pain and found to have potential. The logic does make sense. But the masked man still felt something was wrong, frowning and asked, what ability does he have that Pain would take a fancy to him? Regarding this, Pain has decided to let him demonstrate himself at the meeting. Xiaonan lowered her eyes and said in a cold voice, then you too will be able to see it with your own eyes. Well, not just any cat or dog can enter the Akatsuki organization. The masked man said calmly. Madara. Conan's pale golden eyes suddenly turned to him, her eyes like a knife. Pain is the leader of the Akatsuki organization, it's not your turn to make decisions. She didn't like this masked man, she didn't like him from the beginning. Now that I have obtained the memories of this world from Yifeng, my disgust towards it has turned into genuine hatred. This guy is a pure freshman. Just because he wanted to force Nagato to turn evil, her former companions. Hatasuke and Daibutsu were both murdered by this man in front of them. If she had not been cooperating with her little brother to complete the plan, she would have told him a story of, the power of God cannot hide the tears, on the spot. The masked man was visibly stunned by the rebuke. What's wrong with this woman? Did she eat firecrackers today? I was clearly speaking from the perspective of the Akatsuki organization, so I felt that I was not wrong. A little frustrated. But the masked man ultimately chose to endure for the sake of the big picture. Follow Conan into the Akatsuki base. In the gloomy environment, all members including Pain have arrived. The masked man wearing a black cloak stood in the corner, and the other members were not surprised by this. Everyone in Akatsuki knows this mysterious guy now. He doesn't team up with anyone, nor does he speak at meetings. He just shows up from time to make his presence felt. Compared to the mysterious man who did not show his face, the young man in white standing in the field interested them more. Oh, is this the new guy? Orochimaru, with long hair, spoke first, with a playful expression. He looks like he hasn't even graduated from the ninja school yet. I am indeed still a student of Konoha Ninja School, Senior Orochimaru. Yifeng looked at him and smiled gently. Huh. Orochimaru was stunned, raised his eyebrows and said, a student from Konoha Ninja School actually knows me. Yes. Yifeng nodded gently and smiled. I am also a member of the root under Lord Danzo, and I know a little about the glorious deeds of Senior Orochimaru. I see, you were chosen by Danzo at such a young age. Orochimaru licked his lips and smiled sinisterly. It seems that you do have some good qualities. A member of the root. Kakuzu, who was standing to the left of Orochimaru, took over the conversation and said calmly, I really want to know why the loyal dog trained by Danzo would join us. Could this kid be a spy from Konoha? Scorpion said coldly. Only those who are mediocre and incompetent will become dogs. Yifeng spoke eloquently, without any stage fright, and said, individuals with independent consciousness will not be born with foolish loyalty. Interesting, this kid is quite talkative. Biwa Juzang grinned, and in his heart he felt some agreement and approval of Yifeng's words. Why did he betray the hidden mist village? I just can't stand the stupid policies promulgated by the fourth Mizukage, and the group of idiots from the same village who surround the Mizukage despite that. It seems that you, little brat, are quite confident in your abilities. Kakuzu spoke again, his eyes indifferent. Confidence cannot be expressed with words. Yifeng looked at Kakuzu and asked sincerely, Senior, are you willing to try it yourself? As soon as these words were spoken, the entire base fell into silence. This newcomer was actually openly challenging Kakuzu. The members of the Shao organization all showed curiosity, surprise and amusement on their faces. Interesting, young people nowadays are really ignorant and fearless. Kakuzu stared at the boy with his emerald green pupils and walked into the arena. Although your head may not be worth much, but your heart. I will take it. Swish. Before he finished speaking, his body rushed towards Yifeng like an arrow from a bow. He raised his fist and smashed it down with a whoosh sound. Just at this moment, a cloud of mist suddenly burst out from where Yifeng was. Huh. The masked man and Itachi opened their Sharingan at the same time, but found that the ordinary three Magatama could not see through the fog. It was not until they activated the Mangekyo that the scene in the fog finally came into view. Yifeng placed the blade in his hand on Kakuzu's neck, and said with a gentle smile, "Thank you, senior." Kakuzu was of course not satisfied with this result. He would not die if his head was chopped off. He was just about to burst out and let the boy in front of him see what real strength is. "That's it." Pain suddenly spoke up and said calmly, "Kakuzu, return to your position." Kakuzu was stunned and looked at Pain with a shocked expression. "No, man. You play like this. Do you need me to repeat it again?" Pain looked at him. Kakuzu took a deep breath and returned to his original position, feeling very frustrated. He now felt like an old pervert who was halfway through applying glue when someone suddenly grabbed the tool he was using to commit a crime. The feeling of being caught between two extremes was simply ecstasy. Orochimaru glanced at Kakuzu, who looked very upset, and said with a gloating smile, "It's really an incredible illusion. It seems a bit like the mist hidden technique. Mirror flowers and water moons, this is an illusion I created myself." Yifeng held the knife in his backhand and said softly. A blue light flashed, and the first release was activated on the spot. But no one noticed anything unusual, even though the masked man and Itachi were still using their Mangekyo. A self-created illusion. Orochimaru frowned, and finally showed a little caution on his face. What a genius. No wonder Chief Pain took a fancy to him. Actually, I have also dabbled in forbidden techniques. Yifeng said gently. For example. Speaking of forbidden techniques, Orochimaru immediately became interested. Open black lens bracket shoes. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 1. Hit Grandma Lee with a big hammer. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 2. Monkey in a trap. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket 3. Large tank enema. Close black lens bracket. Nima. Yifeng's heart twitched, but he pretended to be calm and said, "Knock, knock Grandma Lee with the big hammer." The whole audience fell into a strange silence. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations on obtaining the Scorch Release Bloodline. Close black lens bracket. Okay, the bloodline is just given away, right? What do I need this for? PFF'd. Ha 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 ha. In the soul orb, Kushina laughed so hard that she leaned forward and backward and said, "You are talented. You are really talented. Hitting Grandma Lee with a big hammer. How did you come up with this idea? Is there really such a forbidden technique?" "There's a ghost." Yifeng's helpless voice sounded. "So, it is a curse after all." Mrs. Makoto couldn't help laughing, but after all, she was not as straightforward and heroic as her best friend. "This curse is really funny sometimes." Kushina grinned and laughed out loud. "When you least expect it, it can always do something that will make you blind." "Stop talking, it hurts." Yifeng took a deep breath, still maintaining the image of a gentle and elegant boy. The smile on Orochimaru's face had completely disappeared at this time, and his dark golden pupils looked coldly at the young man in the field. "Can you show me the forbidden technique you mentioned, Yifeng-kun?" "Sorry, what I said just now was actually a curse word." Yifeng did not make excuses and said it very frankly. The Akatsuki base fell into strange silence again, and everyone looked at Orochimaru, whose face was completely black. This traitorous ninja of Konoha, one of the legendary three ninjas, is now filled with murderous intent. From childhood to adulthood, no one had ever dared to tease or insult him in front of him. The boy in front of him was the first to do so. One could imagine how angry Orochimaru was at this moment. "Shaolin Yifeng, please be careful about your jokes." Xiao Nan suddenly spoke at this time, saying lightly. On the surface, she was scolding, but in fact, anyone with a discerning eye could hear that she was characterizing the matter. What he meant was, it was just a little joke. As a senior, you, Orochimaru, wouldn't be so tolerant as to tolerate others. Yes, Sorry. Yifeng bowed his head respectfully and admitted his mistake. Hee. Orochimaru sneered twice, but eventually withdrew his murderous intention. Not right. The masked man and Itachi who were watching this scene both felt something unusual. Xiaonan usually rarely cares about the conflicts and contradictions between the members of the Akatsuki organization, but today she acted out of character on the side of the young man in front of her. Isn't it too obvious that he's protecting his own child? Itachi was fine, he just felt that the situation was a bit strange, but the masked man who was familiar with the history of Akatsuki felt like he had seen a ghost. Evil door. That's right, he now really felt that the young man in front of him was a little weird. Not only did she appear inexplicably in his field of vision, but she was also treated differently by both Nagato and Konan. Why? Logically speaking, after Yahiko's death, these two people should have been completely determined and only had their own goals and careers in their eyes. But what is the situation today? First, Nagato forced Kakuzu not to attack again, and then Konan personally came out to protect his cub. If you don't understand this, you might think that kid is the real leader of Akatsuki. What is the reason? The masked man couldn't help but fall into deep thought. The young man's voice sounded again at this moment, and he looked at Orochimaru with an indifferent face and said, I wonder if you have some experience with the impure world reincarnation technique. Orochimaru, who had been too lazy to pay attention to him, suddenly narrowed his pupils and frowned. Interesting, you actually know about impure world reincarnation. When the forbidden technique that interested him was mentioned, the Konoha rebel ninja temporarily put aside his grudges. Not only do I know, Senior Orochimaru. Yi Feng curled his lips and said in a gentle voice. How surprising. Orochimaru obviously understood the hidden meaning in the other party's words, and smiled sinisterly. I thought that there was no other successor to that technique except me. What is impure world reincarnation? Biwa Juzang was confused and couldn't help but ask. I have only heard of it. Kakuzu explained, saying calmly, it is rumored that it is a forbidden technique developed by the second Hokage, Senju Tobirama, which can summon and control the souls of the dead to fight for him. Summon the souls of the dead. Biwa Juzang couldn't help but gasp. Pain added indifferently, the impure world reincarnated possess unlimited chakra and immortality. As long as the caster has enough materials, theoretically they can summon an undead army that can sweep across the entire ninja world. It turned out to be the case. The masked man now seemed to understand why Nagato and Konan valued the young man so much. It's all because of the impure world reincarnation. As long as they can win over the caster Kobayashi Yifeng, the Akatsuki organization can increase its combat power infinitely. Damn. Why didn't Baizetsu discover first that this young man had such incredible skills? If he had known this earlier, he would definitely have taken the initiative and the Moon Eye project could have been launched in advance. Wait, there should still be a chance now. As long as he can offer a suitable price, he may be able to lure the other party to his camp. The masked man was calculating inside his heart as he was thinking about what reason he should use to get close to the other person. What Chief Pain said is exactly what I think. Yi Feng expressed his fantastic idea in front of all the members of Akatsuki. I plan to build an army full of Konoha heroes first. All the heroes of Konoha. Biwa Juazu looked confused. Yes. Yi Feng smiled slightly and said softly. For example, Konoha White Fang, Shunshin Shisui, the first Hokage Senju Hashirama, the second Hokage Senju Tobirama, the fourth Hokage Namikaze Minato. Silence. Hearing these familiar names, everyone present had complicated expressions. It would be very interesting if these heroes of Konoha were to attack the village they once defended with their lives. The lenses on his face reflected silver light, making it impossible to see Yi Feng's eyes at the moment. But all the Akatsuki members present felt a chill in their spines at the proposal of the newcomer in front of them, and they even looked at him with a bit of awe. Devil. This is truly a devil's idea. Although these members of the Akatsuki organization also killed and burned people everywhere and lived like terrorists, they never thought of playing with the dead and trampling on their former glory and dignity. It's so scary that even the devil can't do such a thing, right? In the entire base, Only the masked man looked at Yi Feng with admiration, thinking that this child was truly suitable to be his partner. There is no rule following and no moral pressure. If the two of them joined forces, it would be the perfect match. Damn it, why? He was originally a little annoyed as to why Yi Feng was favored by Nagato and Conan, but now he is annoyed at Nagato. This guy is so lucky to have found such a talented person. But that's okay. The masked man believed that with his sincerity and bargaining chips, he would definitely be able to impress the boy in front of him. Under the mask, the corners of his mouth curved into a smug smile. Pain, who was sitting at the main seat, still maintained an indifferent expression. He looked down at Yi Feng and said, "It's an interesting plan. Are you ready now? I plan to start with the easy ones and then move on to the difficult ones." Yi Feng nodded slightly, and said solemnly, "I will start with those heroes that are not very well known. It seems that you already have a target. Can you tell me who it is?" Orochimaru continued. "Her name is Nohara Lin," Yi Feng said without hesitation. The smile on the masked man's lips disappeared without a trace at this moment. In the dark secret cave, the masked man who had just returned from the Akatsuki meeting overturned the table in front of him, and all kinds of utensils and furnishings were scattered all over the floor. How could there be such an evil and vicious kid in the ninja world who dared to play with the dead? No, you don't seem to be doing well either, do you? He can even kill his caring teacher and his wife without hesitation. In terms of his level of innocence, you are probably even worse than him. Black Zetsu, who was standing behind him, complained in his heart, but on the surface he patiently consoled him. "Calm down, Obito. How can you calm down?" The masked man, Uchiha Obito, was furious and clenched his fists. That immoral bastard wants to turn Lin into a war machine. How can you calm down? No morals. Hearing this comment, Black Zetsu really wanted to laugh. You, a pure freshman, are talking to others about morality at this time. But in the end, Black Zetsu held back and suppressed his laughter, saying, "Maybe that kid was just giving an example. What's the point of him summoning Nohara Rin? Her combat effectiveness is low, and she can only provide a little medical treatment that has little effect." Having said this, he suddenly paused. Obito's scarlet right eye stared at it, with a cold murderous intent in his eyes. "Go on. Good, you finally calmed down." Black Zetsu tried to change the subject. There was no response. Obito's one eye just stared at it. "Sorry, I didn't mean it." Black Zetsu had no choice but to give in for the sake of his big plan, and sighed, "What are you going to do?" "Go kill that brat," Obito said coldly. "I don't recommend you to do this." Black Zetsu shook his head and said in a low voice, "That kid is now a favorite of Nagato and Conan. If you attack him, they will probably notice. This will make our plan fail, and it is obviously not worth the loss. Do you have any other ideas?" Obito's anger still did not subside, but he finally regained some rationality. "If you are worried that Nohara Rin will be used as a weapon of war, you can go and steal her body from Konoha yourself." Black Zetsu made a suggestion, and said in a hoarse voice, "This way, we can solve the problem once and for all." Lin's corpse. Obito looked quite hesitant beneath his mask. Black Zetsu's suggestion is indeed a good one, but it is a bit difficult for Obito to implement it. Nohara Lin is the white moonlight in his heart and also a bright mirror. Without the mirror, he can do all kinds of ugly and vicious things, but once he has to face the mirror, he will become painful, cowardly and powerless. Black Zetsu obviously saw through his inner thoughts at this time, and suddenly felt that his partner was really a hopeless case. Whenever something involves Nohara Rin, he becomes hesitant, indecisive, and easily impulsive. In comparison, the young man in white that it saw today was very impressive. On the surface he appears to be warm, easygoing, elegant and steady, but in his heart he has abandoned all moral and emotional constraints. He is truly a born villain. But a pity. Bloodline determines the limits of growth. Those without Sharingan are destined to become dust in their own plans in this ninja world. Sighing inwardly, Black Zetsu once again acted as a military advisor, giving advice to Obito and saying, if you don't want to do it yourself, you can leave it to White Zetsu. Obito's eyes lit up, and he nodded and said, very good, that's it. We must ensure that Lin's body is intact, and not a single piece of debris can be left behind. After saying this, he turned and walked towards the depths of the cave. You heard it all. Not a single piece of debris can be left behind. Baiju's original body said lightly. Yes. A White Zetsu clone poked its head out from the ground. If you look closely, you can find the 3 very secret words, 007, printed on its neck. But no matter whether it was Black Zetsu, White Zetsu original body or the previous Obito, none of the people present would care about a White Zetsu clone that they used as a tool. At this time, in the woods outside the Hidden Rain village. You're provoking Obito so much, aren't you afraid that he will want to kill you? Conan asked with a worried expression, looking at her little brother. I actually hope that he will want to kill me. Yi Feng's lips curled slightly and he chuckled softly. If that's the case, things will become a little more interesting. Are your mirror flowers and water moons really that magical? Xiao Nan was still a little worried. Her impression of her little brother still remains from the period in the Land of Waves. Although Yi Feng had some strength at that time, he was only comparable to the famous Jonins like Zabuza and Kuroki Raiga. If he faced a strange opponent like Obito who had opened the Mangekyo, he would probably be outmatched. Even though Yi Feng had explained to her that he possessed the bug-level power of Mirror Flower and Water Moon, Xiao Nan's worries did not diminish. The reason was simple. This ability sounded a bit too bizarre to her. It was so bizarre that even though she and Nagato had cooperated with Yi Feng to complete the hypnosis ritual on the members of Akatsuki, they still couldn't believe that this ability really existed. Indeed, it's hard to believe when described in words. Yi Feng smiled slightly, looked at the bushes on the side and said, it just so happens that the opportunity for you to witness it with your own eyes has come. Okay. Xiao Nan followed Yi Feng's gaze and a slender figure with long hair draped over her shoulders came into view. He was wearing the same black robe with red clouds as her. His cheeks were thin and his dark golden vertical pupils were staring at Yi Feng. The person who came was Orochimaru. Senior Orochimaru, you are indeed very punctual. Yi Feng said with a smile. You are really bold, Yi Feng-kun. Orochimaru smiled mockingly and said sinisterly, you dare to break away from the protection of Pain and Conan and ask me to meet you alone. Do you really think I dare not kill you? A terrifying murderous intent burst out, and the birds in the forest flapped their wings and fled in all directions. Conan was standing there in a daze, looking at Orochimaru in front of him stupidly as if he was blind and ignored her. With Senior Orochimaru's strength, it would be easy for him to kill me. Yi Feng still had a gentle smile on his face, and he didn't seem to care about the approach of death. But I think you should be more interested in this thing than killing a nobody like me. As he spoke, a test tube filled with milky white substance appeared in his palm. That's it. Orochimaru's eyes widened and his pupils contracted. Danzo-sama hopes to cooperate with you again to show his sincerity. Yi Feng stroked the test tube in his hand and said softly, this is his latest research result. I see. Are you still Danzo's man after all? Orochimaru showed a look of realization on his face, and smiled sinisterly. If Pain and Conan knew what you are doing now, what do you think would happen? Being able to obtain Danzo's latest research results, he is obviously the most trusted among the trusted ones. So, everything this young man said in the Akatsuki organization was just to gain trust. What a scary little ghost. Senior Orochimaru, are you going to report me? Yi Feng said with a calm smile. If Danzo is really sincere about cooperating with me, I would be happy to do so. Orochimaru grinned and chuckled, it's just a pity that he sent a guy like you to me. What does Senior Orochimaru mean? Yi Feng pretended not to understand and showed a puzzled expression. You are not some nobody, Yi Feng-kun. Orochimaru licked his lips and suddenly rushed forward. If you are given time, you will definitely grow to be someone who surpasses me, right? It's just a pity that I hate people who are similar to me. He grabbed Yi Feng's throat with one hand and lifted him into the air. So that's how it is. Senior Orochimaru actually hates me. Suddenly, Yi Feng's voice sounded strangely behind Orochimaru. Orochimaru turned his head in astonishment, and saw a young man wearing black framed glasses standing under the treetops with a smile on his face. The scattered sunlight shone on him, and the lenses reflected an orange-red light. Then he looked at the person he had captured. He was wearing an Akatsuki uniform, and his scarlet eyes were filled with coldness. Orochimaru, what do you mean by this? Uchiha Itachi. Orochimaru was dumbfounded. How could this happen? He was clearly holding the young man in white. How come he suddenly turned into a living person? In fact, Itachi was also a little confused at this time. He came to Kobayashi Yifeng to ask Danzo whether he really wanted to attack his brother, but as soon as he showed up, he saw Orochimaru rushing towards him. With his strength, he is completely capable of dodging it. But at that moment, his body was firmly restrained by some strange force. When he came to his senses again, he was already being held in the air by Orochimaru's neck. He was still saying that he hated people who were similar to him. Itachi felt speechless. How the hell am I similar to you? Is it just because we are both traitors of Konoha? Ha, hee. Orochimaru seemed to understand something and looked at Yifeng behind him. I am becoming more and more interested in you, Yifeng-kun. Got fooled. Not only was he fooled, but Uchiha Itachi in front of him was also fooled. This kid's ability is not as simple as he appears. He can actually perform this level of illusion silently. Sharingan. Orochimaru now desperately wants to obtain the Sharingan. Only if you have the Sharingan, you won't be so passive when facing illusions. As for why Uchiha Itachi, who possessed the Sharingan, was also fooled, it was obviously because he was not capable enough. Only by combining your own abilities with the Sharingan can you become the strongest. Thinking of this, Orochimaru decisively stretched out his free left hand and dug into Itachi's eyes. Looking at Orochimaru's attacking palm, the three Magatama in Itachi's pupils turned, and his lips uttered softly, magic. Jagong Jutsu. Quote. The air before my eyes vibrated and the scene suddenly changed. A space shrouded in blood. Uchiha Itachi, who was originally held in Orochimaru's hand, appeared several meters away, his scarlet eyes staring at him coldly. This is... Orochimaru looked down at his body, which was like being executed with huge metal nails inserted into it. It was then that Orochimaru realized that he had always underestimated this fellow villager renegade. Well, the legendary three ninjas actually fell into illusion twice in one day. This made Orochimaru's mentality collapse a little, and he broke free from the restraints at the cost of an arm. He didn't even have time to say anything harsh, and used the earth escape method to stay away from this troubled place. What a beautiful counterattack, Mr. Itachi! Yi Feng exclaimed, is this the power of the Sharingan? Shaolin Yi Feng. Uchiha Itachi turned his scarlet eyes to him and said indifferently, are you a subordinate of Shimura Danzo or a member of Akatsuki? I don't think there is any conflict between these two identities, Mr. Itachi. Yi Feng smiled and said gently, for me, whether being a subordinate of Danzo or a member of Akatsuki, it is just a way to achieve my goal. Itachi's expression froze, and his pupils contracted. He obviously understood the deeper meaning of Yi Feng's words, which was why he was so shocked. This young man in front of him actually regarded the root and Akatsuki as stepping stones. He just regarded them as tools to be used in order to achieve his own goals. And many more. Could it be that he had deliberately arranged for me to come here now? He deliberately wanted me to clash with Orochimaru so that he could reap the benefits. Oh, it looks like you've discovered me. Yi Feng seemed to see through the other person's inner thoughts at this moment, and said with a sigh, I originally thought that with Senior Orochimaru's strength, even if I can't kill you, I can still fight with you, Mr. Itachi, and then I can complete the task easily. Mission. Itachi's pupils shrank as he said coldly, did Danzo ask you to kill me? He actually doesn't care about himself, what he really cares about is his younger brother. The remnants of the Uchiha should not survive in this world. These are the words of Danzo-sama. Yi Feng did not hide anything and said frankly, unfortunately, it may be difficult for me to kill you alone. It seems that I can only choose an easier target, starting with Uchiha Sasuke. Clang. The long sword in Yifeng's hand collided with Itachi's kunai, sparks flying everywhere. Mr. Itachi, are you angry? Yifeng curled his lips and said in a gentle tone, I heard Sasuke say it himself that you killed your parents and clan members just to test your own tolerance. If that's the case, it shouldn't matter if it's just a brother. Give up the idea of attacking Sasuke. The Magatama in Itachi's pupils turned, and he said with a cold expression. What if I refuse? Yifeng asked with a smile. I'll let you die here. The three Magatama in Itachi's eyes transformed into a windmill-like form, and he whispered mercilessly, Amaterasu. Boom. Black flames rose from Yifeng's body and instantly spread all over his body. But unexpectedly, Yifeng not only did not show any pain on his face, but he smiled weirdly at Itachi. What? Uchiha Itachi just realized that something was wrong when a flash of sword light suddenly appeared behind him. Puff. Blood splattered, filling the air. Uchiha Itachi looked at the knife scar on his shoulder with an expression of disbelief on his face. You actually dodged it at the critical moment. Yifeng, who appeared behind him, shook off the blood on the blade and praised with a smile. As expected of Mr. Itachi, your reaction is very quick. And Yifeng, who was originally set on fire by Amaterasu, also turned into a few wisps of smoke and dissipated at this time. You. Itachi stared at the other person, his expression so surprised that he couldn't even speak. What is that? What just happened? Illusion. Substitute. What kind of illusion and substitute can even be affected by the kaleidoscope? This is incredible. Did you just tell me to give up on Sasuke? Yifeng pulled out a photo from his pocket and threw it to him. I'm so sorry, that's something that has already happened. Something that has already happened. Itachi was stunned and his body began to tremble uncontrollably. Could it be that Sasuke has already? His eyes subconsciously looked at the photo, and his expression suddenly became dull. In the photo, Uchiha Sasuke, his younger brother, was kneeling on the ground in a black gothic Lolita skirt, with two ponytails on his head, looking at the camera with a face full of shame and anger. Itachi's brain began to get confused at this moment. Was this the way to attack? That's all for today, Mr. Itachi. Yifeng turned around and said softly, I'm very happy to be able to communicate with you face to face. Wait, Zhaolin Yifeng. Uchiha Itachi tried to stop him and shouted, Tell me, what did you do to Sasuke? Don't be nervous, it's just a friendly exchange between classmates. Yifeng smiled and looked at Xiao Nan on the side. Let's go, Sister Nan. Conan nodded slightly and looked at Itachi with complicated eyes, as he had never paid attention to her from beginning to end. Now she finally understood why her little brother was so confident. Even Itachi, who possesses the Mangekyo Sharingan, can be played like a monkey. There is probably nothing in this ninja world that can hurt him. Zhaolin Yifeng, I told you to stop. Uchiha Itachi was almost going crazy at this time, and in order to keep Yifeng, he quickly began to make seals with his hands. Fire style. Great Dragon Fire Jutsu. A huge fire dragon spewed out and bombarded Yifeng directly. The young man in white did not turn around, still with his back to Uchiha Itachi, and whispered, Water style. Water clear wave. Rumble. Dozens of rotating water columns rushed out of the ground, forming a water wall several feet high. The fire hydrant hit the water column and was put out instantly. Surrounded by dense mist, Uchiha Itachi had an incredible expression on his face. He saw clearly that the young man did not perform any hand seals at all. Moreover, the Shui Qing Bo technique should only produce a water column, right? But Shaolin Yifeng actually summoned a water wall. In this waterless environment, what kind of monster is this boy? Yuyan Village, High Tower. Nagato, with short red hair, was reading the reconstruction plan of the Hidden Rain Village, with great interest until Conan pushed the door open and entered the room. Is everything settled? Nagato put down the book and looked up and asked. Well, let's remove Orochimaru from the organization. Conan nodded and said softly, he probably won't come back. Nagato was stunned for a moment, then nodded slightly and said, okay. Yifeng's ability of Mirror Flower and Water Moon. Is it really as powerful as he says? I think the reality is even more outrageous than what he said, and it's not just a mirage. Conan's face was complicated, and he told everything that happened in the woods. Nagato, now that you have fully recovered, can you do that? Are you kidding me? Nagato gasped in disbelief. The Mayan released more than a dozen water waves to form a water wall. Is this the ninjutsu I understand? I can't understand it either, but this is the fact that appears before my eyes. Xiaonan said lightly. What an incredible child. Nagato sighed and said, but it's good this way. We don't need to worry about his safety anymore. This way, we can devote ourselves to building Yugaker. Conan, are you listening? Halfway through his words, Nagato suddenly realized that something was not right with his friend's expression. Yeah, I'm listening. Xiaonan nodded slightly, but it seemed like a mechanical and subconscious response. The corners of Nagato's mouth twitched slightly, and he whispered, so what did I just say? Continue to eat roasted sweet potatoes in the evening. Xiaonan responded. Nagato took a breath and couldn't help but rant. You look like a sweet potato to me now. Ahem. Xiaonan finally came to his senses at this time and turned away embarrassedly. Sorry, I was a little distracted just now. Are you thinking about your brother again? Nagato said helplessly. He is still so young, hiding in Konoha alone, and there is no one to take care of him. Conan sighed. Could it be that my good friend wanted to go to Konoha to be a nanny for that child? Nagato raised his eyebrows with a strange expression. Have you ever thought about what you would do if you left the Hidden Rain village? Oh, I forgot that I am a healthy person now. Although I am still sitting in a wheelchair, I am acting for Obito and Zetsu. But even if he can take care of himself, what about the construction of the Hidden Rain village? After a long silence, Nagato said quietly, Conan, I have a very important question that I hope you can answer for me. What? Xiaonan blinked her beautiful light golden eyes. Do you have any special interest in younger boys? Nagato carefully asked, choosing his tone. In layman's terms, Shotokan. Xiaonan was stunned for a moment, frowned and said, do you suspect I'm a pervert? No, I just. Nagato tried to explain in a panic. In my eyes, only Yifeng is special. Xiaonan glanced at him, turned and left the tower. So, you didn't deny that you are a Shotokan at all, right? Nagato looked at her departing back, his face finally revealing the pain he could no longer hold back. At this time, at the root of Konoha. What did you say, Orochimaru? Danzo, who was sitting on the high platform, stared with a surprised expression on his face and asked, Orochimaru is also in that Akatsuki organization? Yes, Lord Danzo. Yifeng nodded solemnly. Danzo lowered his head and remained silent for a long time. Then he took a deep breath and said, if Orochimaru was involved, it's not your fault that you failed to complete the mission. The remnants of the Uchiha family, they are lucky this time. This Danzo really thinks himself a big shot. He can kill Uchiha Itachi if he wants to, right? Kushina's sarcastic voice sounded. That's normal. He hasn't seen Itachi's full strength. Yifeng smiled softly and comforted him. In Danzo's opinion, Orochimaru is obviously much stronger than Uchiha Itachi. The limitations of the older generation, Kushina sighed. Before she gained the memories of this world, she actually thought that Orochimaru was obviously stronger. The title of the legendary Three Ninjas was earned through the bloodbath. Who would have thought that a being like Orochimaru could not even resist the illusion of the Sharingan? Mrs. Masaki did not participate in the conversation between the two, but just listened quietly in the Soul Pearl. She had very mixed feelings towards Itachi, her eldest son. There is no hatred or anger towards him, nor sympathy for his current situation. There is only a deep sadness lingering in my heart. Shaolin Yifeng. Danzo on the high platform spoke again, without any sadness or joy. Since Orochimaru knew that you were my man, didn't he say anything to you? Yes. Yifeng nodded and said respectfully, Senior Orochimaru asked me to tell you that I hope to have the opportunity to work with you again. Cooperation. Danzo sneered and said coldly, as a trader of Konoha, he is no longer qualified. What Danzo is researching now is the Super Ninja Potion. And that idiot Orochimaru must still be treating the discarded trash as treasures. The resources they have now are not equal, so what cooperation can they talk about? I think so too. Yi Feng said as he took out a tube of reagent from his pocket and handed it to Danzo. But before leaving, Senior Orochimaru asked me to pass this to you. This is. Danzo's expression at this moment was exactly the same as Orochimaru's before, even more fanatical than Orochimaru. According to Senior Orochimaru, this is his latest achievement. Yi Feng said with his head down. Did Orochimaru, that guy, also get this? Danzo stared at the milky white substance in the test tube and had to admit that the quality of this stuff was even stronger than what he had purified now. Have to admit, compared to his stupid subordinates, Orochimaru's research level is indeed much higher. By this calculation, it is not a loss to cooperate with the other party. Thinking this in his heart, Danzo lowered his eyes and said, Shaolin Yifeng, you did a great job this time. Not only did you do nothing wrong, but you also did something useful. Everything is for Konoha. Yi Feng said modestly. That's right, everything we do now is for Konoha. Danzo nodded with satisfaction and said lightly, Shaolin Yifeng, do you know what is in it? As the creator of the Super Ninja Potion, he was forced to listen to Danzo's 10-minute popular science lecture. Only then did he leave the root base with a large bag of various scrolls given by the other party. Danzo-sama, you are such a good leader. Yi Feng glanced at the contents of the scroll and sighed, you knew that I was good at illusion and swordsmanship, but you gave me a bunch of scrolls on Earth Escape and Lightning Escape. Ha 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 ha. Kushina couldn't help but burst into laughter and teased, aren't you going to do something to repay me? Indeed, so I'm going to the Hokage building now. Yi Feng nodded seriously and said, report to Sarutobi Hiruzen all the hard work that Danzo has done for Konoha over the years. Hokage's office. Looking at the Hashirama cell cultivation plan in his hand, Hokage advisor Mito Kato En showed an expression of disbelief and astonishment on his face and said, Danzo actually. What a bastard. Yutain Kaharu, who was also a consultant, was also furious and said with cold eyes, Danzo dared to desecrate the corpse of the first generation. He is really too much. In fact, in addition to this plan, the table in the Hokage's office also contains Sharingan and Hashirama cell fusion experiment, Hashirama cell transplant body record, and so on. Folders of all kinds were piled up in a pile. As the Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen was not in a hurry to comment on the dirty deeds done by his old friend. He looked at the boy not far away and said, you did a good job, Yi Feng. Thanks to you, otherwise we would still be kept in the dark about what Danzo did. This is what I should do, Lord Hokage. Yi Feng lowered his head with a humble look in his eyes. How did you get this evidence, young man? Yutain Kaharu also looked at him at this time, frowning and saying, didn't Danzo notice it? Danzo-sama hopes that I can participate in his new experimental plan. Yi Feng's expression deliberately pretended to be complicated, and he said in a tangled tone, these materials are the reference books he prepared for me. A new experimental plan. He's not planning to stop yet. Mito Manen and Yutain Kaharu looked shocked. Yi Feng, do you know what Danzo's new experimental plan is about? Sarutobi Hiruzen asked in a low voice. Open black lens bracket shoes. Close black lens bracket. 1. Perform the boy-girl transformation technique on Sarutobi Hiruzen on the spot. 2. Expose your belly and show everyone present the flesh branding experiment that Danzo has planted on you. 3. Take out a copy of Proposal for Enhancing the Conscience of All Ninja Men from your pocket and let them see the evil of Danzo. Hiss. Looking at the options interface that suddenly popped up in front of him, Yi Feng's expression almost froze. What the hell are these options? Little boy-girl transformation. Can Sarutobi Hiruzen, whose face looks like a blooming chrysanthemum when he smiles, be transformed into a little boy-girl? Even if he is transformed, he should be an old boy-girl, right? What the hell? I can't think about it anymore, images are going to appear in my mind. Yifeng took a deep breath and nipped his dangerous thoughts in the bud. As for the second one, he skipped it without a doubt. What the hell is this flesh branding experiment? This damn system is really inhuman. By eliminating the first two items by process of elimination, only the last one remains. Yifeng reached into his pocket with a calm face, and as expected, he took out a document. Sarutobi Hiruzen took the document and glanced at it briefly, with a big question mark popping up above his head. He lowered his head and read it again in detail, and the whole person was struck by lightning. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations on obtaining the Ice Shield bloodline. Close black lens bracket. Can you please not give me rewards and stop issuing tasks? Yifeng sighed deeply. This BYD system always pops up to show its presence when he is least prepared. It's really fucking new. Hiruzen, what's going on? What kind of evil plan is this? The two consultants, Utane Kaharu and Mitokado N, were getting a little anxious, as it was obvious that something was not right with their old friend's expression. After being stunned for a long time, Sarutobi Hiruzen gradually recovered. With a twitching cheek, he put the document on the table, took a deep puff of cigarette and said, "You can read it for yourselves." The two consultants curiously leaned over to take a look, and immediately both fell into a petrified state. Yifeng, you've worked hard today. Sarutobi Hiruzen ignored his two friends and looked directly at the boy in front of him and said, "Don't tell anyone about these secrets about Danzo for now." There was a hint of guilt in Yifeng's eyes, which was just caught by Sarutobi Hiruzen. Sighing slightly, the third Hokage comforted him like a kind old man with an enlightening tone. "Don't think too much, Yifeng. You are a good child, and I know you care about Danzo's cultivation of you. Hokage-sama, you don't need to explain to me. I understand you. What you are doing now is not betrayal, but redemption. Not only redeeming yourself, but also redeeming Danzo who cultivated you. If you let him go on making such mistakes, can you imagine how many innocent families will be implicated and harmed?" Yes. Yifeng seemed to have figured it out and nodded slightly. "Go back and have a good rest." Sarutobi Hiruzen patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Go out with your good friends and relax. I promise that from today on, Danzo and the people from the root will not disturb you anymore." "Thank you, Hokage." Yifeng thanked him sincerely and then turned and left. What a good boy. He still cares about Danzo even when he is forced into this state by him. Utane Kaharu had regained her composure by this time, and exclaimed in admiration as she looked at Yifeng's departing back. "Yes." Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded in agreement and said, "I plan to find him a good teacher who can help him develop his talents to the greatest extent." "Have you chosen someone?" asked Utane Kaharu. "Well, how about Kakashi?" Sarutobi Hiruzen suggested. "Okay, let him try first." Utane Kaharu first approved her friend's proposal, then turned her eyes to the proposal for the increase of male conscience in the ninja world on the desk, and the corners of her mouth could not help but twitch twice. "I really don't understand, what is Danzo thinking? What is the purpose of his plan? To increase the conscience of all male ninjas, and then what? What's the point of this?" Sarutobi Hiruzen also frowned and shook his head. "It's hard to imagine the mental state of my old friend when he made this plan. Could he be crazy? He wants to make himself more confident." Mizuto Menyon suddenly spoke with a firm expression. "For confidence?" Utane Kaharu stared with a confused look on her face. "You don't know that Danzo has always been very inferior in his heart." Mitoman N sighed and said, "He is not injured at all, but why is he always wrapped in bandages? Why does he always refuse to participate in every grand ceremony of Konoha? Have you ever thought about the deeper reasons behind this? Is it all because of inferiority complex?" Sarutobi Hiruzen continued. "Yes." Mitokado N nodded and looked at his old friend. "The source of his inferiority complex actually started when you became Hokage, Hiruzen. Over the years, he has been constantly comparing himself with you, but you have surpassed him in every aspect. Deeply affected by the pain accumulated over the years, he probably came up with such an extreme plan. But what does a growing conscience have to do with self-confidence? Asked Utane Kaharu in confusion. If every man's conscience becomes like that of a woman, and he is the only normal person. Mitomen N paused here and said with a serious expression, then, it is no surprise that he will become the most confident man in the entire ninja world. So that's how it is. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked enlightened. Danzo, this guy really has good intentions. Utane Kaharu exclaimed. Ha ha ha, oh my god. Kushina in the underground base couldn't stop laughing when she saw this scene. She slapped Yi Feng's thigh and said, what kind of alien brain circuits do these people have? They actually believed such a ridiculous plan. Kushina, please be gentle. Mrs. Masaki, who was standing beside the two of them, patted her best friend on the shoulder and reminded her, Yi Feng is still a child. Oh, what a virtuous and good wife. Kushina, who was sitting on Yi Feng's lap, had a playful expression on her face. She looked at her and teased, you feel pain when I beat him, right? Then I'm going to beat him. As she said that, she raised her hand and slapped Yi Feng's thigh hard again. In fact, she was not in a physical state at all, and even if she used force, it was only a slight touch. What? What do you mean by feeling sorry for me? Mrs. Makoto's cheeks flushed, and she turned away and said, I just think that your behavior is inappropriate and immoral. Then what is not considered immoral? Kushina raised her hand and touched her chin, her tone frivolous. Wearing up in the morning in a maid outfit and giving the master a wake-up call. Puff. Mrs. Makoto's face suddenly turned red, and a strong sense of shame rose in her heart. I won't tell you yet. I'll go see how Shisui's hollow state is. He slipped out of the laboratory as if escaping from danger. HMPH, is that all you can do? Kushina sneered as she watched her best friend leave. You too, this. Yi Feng found it difficult to comment on this. She wants to start a new life, but she can't let go of the shackles of the past. Kushina shook her head and sighed, this won't work. I'm helping her, don't you understand what I mean? I don't understand. Yi Feng shook his head. Kushina pinched his cheeks unhappily and snorted, you got all the benefits, and you're still pretending to be a fool in front of me. I think it's better to just let nature take its course, Yi Feng suggested. That won't do. Kushina let go of her hand and looked back at the monitor. With Makoto's personality, how long will it take for things to go smoothly? Now that I'm trapped, she's still standing on the shore watching. Doesn't that make me look really immoral? Yi Feng laughed awkwardly and said sincerely, that must not be the case. It was all because of my seduction. PFF'd. Kushina immediately made him laugh and reached out to touch Yi Feng's cheek. So how did you seduce this little brat who hasn't even grown all his hair yet? That's a personal attack. But I have to admit that you are attractive to girls. That curse might not just be a curse. Could it have transformed you into a succubus of the ninja world? Seeing Yi Feng's constipated expression, Kushina hugged his neck and couldn't help laughing. At this time, Sarutobi Hiruzen and others on the monitor also began to make a final summary of their handling of Danzo. Let's have a good talk with him first and persuade him to give up this unrealistic idea. Mizuto Menyon said softly. Just a talk. Utane Kaharu was obviously not satisfied with this suggestion. She frowned and said, he has done such a thing. He should at least be detained first. Shaochan, that is Danzo after all. Mitomen Yan explained with sincerity, we are actually somewhat responsible for the way he has become now. This. Utane Kaharu was obviously persuaded, and her expression became a little hesitant. How about confinement? Sarutobi Hiruzen suggested, let him reflect at home for a while and calm down. Okay, that's a good suggestion. I agree. The two advisors nodded in unison. No, they're joking, right? Kushina was stunned by the way this was handled, her eyes widened. That's it. Stealing the remains of the first Hokage, performing inhumane human experiments, wantonly killing ninjas from the same village, attempting to transform the conscience of all male ninjas in the ninja world. For such a series of heinous acts, he was given a simple sentence of solitary confinement. That's normal. After all, that's their good friend Danzo. Yi Feng was not surprised at all. He said with a sneer on his face, "This is an internal conflict among the rulers of Konoha. It's not appropriate to fight and kill." "Really?" Kushina understood what he meant, took a deep breath and said, "Why did Minato and I fight to the death to stop Kurama? It feels meaningless. This village is so dark that it makes people feel chilling." "That's different. You were trying to protect the people of Konoha." Yi Feng shook his head and smiled, "The people are innocent after all." Yi Feng's words finally brought some comfort to Kushina, but her mood did not improve much at the moment. The lives of so many innocent people are just a bunch of simple numbers in the eyes of these Konoha high-ranking officials. They are not even as important as a hair of their good friend Danzo. Anyone with a conscience will feel angry when seeing this scene. Now she finally understood why Yi Feng said that only by completely overthrowing the old system could the ninja world be reborn. Because as long as these old guys are still in high positions, there will be no equality in the ninja world. Actually, from our point of view, this is actually beneficial to us. Yi Feng said with a smile. Is there any benefit? Kushina looked confused. Their enemies are my heroes. Yi Feng said calmly, the existence of Konoha F4 is the biggest cancer of Konoha. But for those of us who are gravediggers looking forward to the destruction of the old system, they are indeed the best comrades and friends. The more corrupt and vicious they are, the closer the date of our victory will be. What you said seems to be true. Kushina was stunned for a moment, then nodded thoughtfully. So I have always been grateful to Danzo-sama and Hokage-sama. Yi Feng's mouth curled up and he chuckled, I treat them as my relatives, close friends, brothers and good friends. You are such a scoundrel, you are such a scoundrel. Kushina slapped him and scolded him with a smile, you sold him out right away. Is this how you treat your friends? Well, friends can never compare to good brothers. I'm going to watch you die. Kushina, with a look of shame and anger on her face, grabbed both of his cheeks and began to pull them away. I was wrong, I was wrong. Yi Feng pretended to be in pain and began to beg for mercy. Kushina, Lin is awake. Mrs. Makoto's reappearance interrupted their intimate interaction. HMPH, I'll spare you this time. Kushina jumped off Yi Feng's legs, walked to her best friend and patted her butt. My exclusive throne is temporarily reserved for you, don't let me down. What exclusive throne? I don't understand what you are saying at all. Mrs. Makoto's face was very red and her mouth was very hard, but her eyes involuntarily glanced towards Yi Feng's legs. She was thinking whether she really should break through herself. At this moment, a slightly cheerful voice sounded from the monitor. Master Chief, are you home? The person who came was White Zetsu 007. Apparently it had already mastered the method of calling Yi Feng from the cabin. There was a flash of annoyance in Mrs. Makoto's eyes. This White Zetsu came at a really bad time. But he didn't say anything, instead he sensibly left the laboratory. What Obito wants is in the pond in the backyard of the cabin. Yi Feng did not show up to meet the other party, but spoke directly through the communicator. In the pool. Bai Zetsu 007 scratched his head and followed Yi Feng's instructions to walk into the backyard of the cottage. The water in the pond was very clear, and there were two green-skinned toads, one large and one small, chasing and playing in it. Well, that, leader. White Zetsu 07's expression was a little stiff. He wondered if his leader had made a mistake. You just need to send them back to Obito. Yi Feng's gentle voice sounded, and he said lightly, tell him that the small toad is Nohara Lin's head, and the big one is her body. Dark Cave. Obito, wearing a yellow mask with black patterns, paced back and forth on the steps, looking a little anxious. Don't worry, A2. A White Zetsu standing at the bottom of the stairs couldn't help but let out a sharp laugh when he saw this, and said slowly, I believe that you will be able to meet your beloved Lin again soon. This White Zetsu looked very unusual, its entire face was twisted in a spiral shape, and the lines on its body were completely different from those of other White Zetsu, making it an elite monster that could be seen with the naked eye. This thing is Uzumaki White Zetsu, or you can call it Eifei. Unlike the clones of White Zetsu's original body, it was truly created by Uchiha Madara through the Outer Path Demon statue combined with Hashirama's chakra. His strength far exceeds that of the White Zetsu himself, and his personality is more anthropomorphic than other White Zetsu. Its original intention was to comfort Obito, but it ended up flattering him. The masked man suddenly turned his gaze to it and vented his emotions, saying, "How many times have I told you not to call me that ridiculous name again?" But. Ah-Fei felt a little aggrieved. This was the name he had been using since he and Obito first met. "No buts," Obito said in a cold and condescending voice, "I am no longer the foolish boy you knew. Don't talk to me in such a slick tone anymore." Ah-Fei opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but was stopped by Black Zetsu who was wearing White Zetsu. "Stop talking." Before he saw Nohara Rin's body, this guy was a powder keg. "Do we really have no friendship?" Ah-Fei fell silent, and couldn't help but think of what the White Zetsu clone who called himself 007 had said to him. In the eyes of Uchiha Madara, Obito, White Zetsu and Black Zetsu, they are just dispensable tools. Even if they die for them, they won't get a single tear. At that time, Ah-Fei did not think too deeply about it, he just thought that this 007 was very creative and interesting. It was not until now that it suddenly woke up. 007 is right. Ah-Fei felt a little disheartened and stepped aside with his head down. Neither Black and White Zetsu nor Obito paid attention to its behavior. In their eyes, this Uzumaki-faced Afei has always been a typical psychopath. When Uchiha Madara was still alive, he was pissed off by it several times. It was not surprising that this guy did anything abnormal. "Hello everyone." A white head suddenly emerged from the ground and greeted everyone, "I'm back." Obito's eyes lit up, and he quickly asked, "Is it done?" "Well, 2 toads were found." White Zetsu 007 blurted out. "What?" Obito obviously didn't hear clearly. "I mean, it's done." White Zetsu 007 looked a little nervous, and slowly crawled out from underground. "The body of Miss Lin is here with me." It had never seen the power of mirror flowers and water moon, but in order to complete the task assigned by the leader, it still appeared in front of Obito. "Rin." Obito didn't care what it said. He rushed forward and hugged the 2 toads, one big and one small, in White Zetsu 07's arms. He squeezed so hard that the 2 frogs rolled their eyes. This. White Zetsu 007 was stunned by the scene before him. He hadn't even explained what the leader had said. Looking around, he found that it was not just Obito himself. Even Black and White Zetsu didn't show any abnormality when they saw him holding the 2 toads. "Oh my god. Is this what the leader said, that everything is under control?" Too domineering. However, there was an exception among the people present, Uzumaki White Zetsu, Afei. At the Akatsuki meeting, both Black and White Zetsu and Obito were present, and they witnessed the liberation ceremony of Mirror Flower and Water Moon with their own eyes. Afei did not go with them, but he escaped. At this moment, it looked at Obito hugging the toad, with a warm and affectionate look, and tilted its head, a little bit unable to understand for a moment. "That toad is Nohara Rin. Are you?" Ah-Fei opened his mouth to correct it, but was stared at by Obito's scarlet eyes. "I'll say it again, don't use that stupid name again." There was a cold tone in his voice, and Ah-Fei could even feel that the other party had murderous intentions. "I considered him a friend, but he actually wanted to kill me." "Okay. Come to think of it, I helped Madara-sama to deceive him in the past, so I guess we are even now." Ah-Fei scratched his head, but still felt a little uncomfortable. To be exact, it's very frustrating. It was even more frustrating than when he was caught peeping at Mr. Madara's poop. "I want to be alone with Lin for a while. We can talk about other things later." Obito said this coldly and walked into the depths of the cave with the 2 toads in his arms. "Okay." Heibai-ju nodded and burrowed into the soil. They are not interested in watching such boring and miserable dramas. It would be better to use their time to gather more intelligence. Ah-Fei sighed and was about to turn around and leave, when he saw the White Zetsu who called himself 007, and a few younger brothers who were also clones of White Zetsu quietly following Obito into the inner room. Obito, who was immersed in the reunion with his beloved girl, obviously did not notice this. After entering the inner room, he placed the two toads on his bed and stroked their rough skin as if he was caressing his lover. "Everyone, you see now, is our new leader a god?" White Zetsu 007 squatted underground, pointing at the scene in front of him and said proudly, "With just a Mangekyo Sharingan, he is still being fooled." "Indeed, you are right." One of the White Zetsu clones nodded in agreement, and then changed the subject. "But I am more concerned about the 5 social insurances and 1 housing fund. Are they really there?" HMPH. White Zetsu 007 snorted, dug a hole in his chest and took out a pair of brand new sunglasses. "See. This is the reward for completing the mission earlier." The White Zetsu clones around them gasped, with envy visible on their faces. They would never dare to think of such a thing in their lifetime, even if they completed the task and got a reward. And it's not just the 5 social insurances and 1 housing fund. White Zetsu 007 looked around and said calmly with a grin, "My leader has also said that if you fellow compatriots are willing to join us, you will have 2 days off every week. Think about it, how many years have you not had a rest?" "But, damn it." Another White Zetsu clone gnashed his teeth and shouted angrily, "Compared like this, Uchiha Madara and Black and White Zetsu are really not human. They only know how to order us around, and don't care about our thoughts and opinions at all. And Obito is also a bastard." A voice of agreement sounded next to it, complaining, "I just wanted to verify with him how humans fart, and he planted me in the field for a whole week." "In that case, why don't we just follow 007, suggested the White Zetsu clone who spoke first. "Not with me." White Zetsu 007 shook his head and said solemnly, "Follow my leader. He is our guiding light, the dawn that illuminates the entire ninja world." 007, you are really good now, said the White Zetsu clone squatting next to it with envy on his face. "Read more books and learn more." White Zetsu 007 patted its shoulder and said seriously, "This is the only way to become a useful White Zetsu, instead of being useless like the original body. And the leader has promised me. If we complete the task well enough, he will choose a White Zetsu from among us to be the toilet guard." What? Bathroom guard? Doesn't that mean I can study human poop every day?" The enthusiasm of White Zetsu's clones was fully mobilized, and they looked at 007 with burning eyes. "Huh, what a bunch of trash." A cold voice suddenly sounded, and all the clones, including White Zetsu 007, looked in the direction of the voice. A White Zetsu with an unusual whirlpool face looked at them with his arms folded across his chest, his attitude very contemptuous. "How dare you dare to try to get your hands on that honor? The restroom guard is destined to be mine. The night is shrouded in darkness, and the sky is full of bright stars. Hey, are you the leader that 007 mentioned?" The whirlpool-faced White Zetsu looked at the half-grown man in front of him and stretched out his hand to measure his height. "You are still a short guy, and you don't look that good. Afei, you bastard." Hearing that the other party dared to disrespect his leader, White Zetsu 007 immediately got furious. "No need to do that, 007. Yi Feng raised his hand to stop the other party, and said gently, "I believe Mr. Afei has no ill intentions, he is just a little nervous when we first meet." "Tense, nervous." Afei snorted and said with his hands on his hips, "What a joke, how could I be nervous?" As he spoke, his body shook slightly uncontrollably. Yi Feng and Baiju 007 subconsciously looked at his legs, which were shaking like a newborn deer. Anyway. Afei seemed to know that he had embarrassed himself, and quickly changed the subject. "I came here today just to ask you something in person. Please speak." Yi Feng didn't care about his attitude and his expression remained gentle. "If we are willing to switch to your company, we will have 5 social insurances and 1 housing fund, and 2 days off a week, is that true?" "Not only that, but there are also 2 weeks of paid vacation each year." "Master Chief." Afei knelt on one knee and clasped his hands together. "From today on, Afei, I will follow you. I don't even know who Uchiha Madara is. Hurry up, the leader doesn't like kneeling. White Zetsu 007 pulled it up from the ground and considerately patted the dirt off its knees. I have received Mr. Afei's kindness. Yi Feng smiled and nodded, saying calmly, but there is a question that I am very curious about. Now that you have chosen to stand on our side, aren't you afraid that the goddess on the moon will be angry? Oh, the leader really knows a lot about us. Ah Fei scratched his head and said frankly, Lord Kagaya is very powerful, but I have decided to be a person with my own ideas. What's more? What's more? Yi Feng asked puzzledly. Even if Lady Kagaya really breaks the seal and comes out, isn't there still the leader in front to support her? Ah Fei spread his hands. Fine, 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 if anyone says that White Zetsu is a brainless idiot again, he will definitely spit in their face. He has just joined the company and he has already planned to let his leader take the blame. Is this something a brainless person can come up with? The corners of Yi Feng's mouth twitched slightly, and he was speechless. Poochie. White Zetsu 007 couldn't hold it back and laughed out loud. I am very grateful that you think so highly of me, Mr. Afei. Yi Feng smiled again and said calmly, next, I hope you can cooperate with 007 to attract more White Zetsu with ideals and ambitions to our side. Don't worry, I'm determined to get the job of toilet guard. Ah Fei raised his head proudly and pulled White Zetsu 007 back into the ground. It was not until the two White Zetsu completely disappeared that Yi Feng turned his gaze to the small room on the side. Sasuke, have you finished the homework I assigned? I don't quite understand. The hedgehog-haired boy walked out from the shadows and frowned, so I wanted to ask you. About what? Yi Feng asked with a smile. The definition of the origin of ninjutsu. Does the Sage of Six Paths really exist? Sasuke said, his eyes still looking at the place where the two White Zetsu disappeared. Isn't that just a legend? They do exist. Yi Feng nodded and said, the existence of Ah Fei and 007 that you just saw is directly related to the mother of the Six Paths Sage. The Six Paths Sage has a mother. Sasuke was stunned. Then how do you think the Six Paths Sage appeared, Sasuke? Did he pop out from between the rocks? Yi Feng couldn't help laughing and asked humorously. Sasuke's expression suddenly became a little awkward. He coughed twice and said, so, those two guys just now were originally our enemy. You dug them over. He roughly listened to the conversation between Yi Feng, Afei and Baiju 007, but there were some things he didn't understand. Hostile forces. Yi Feng pondered for a moment, shook his head and smiled. Seriously speaking, they are not. They are just a fragile camp composed of a group of uneducated Gotham citizens. Citizens of Gotham. Sasuke now understands the meaning of these four words, and he feels a little uncomfortable every time he hears them. Well, the core member of this camp is still your ancestor Uchiha Madara. Yi Feng suddenly spoke. What? Sasuke was stunned for a moment, and said in surprise, isn't that guy dead? He just wants people to see him dead. Yi Feng patted Sasuke's shoulder and sighed, but is he really dead? Like dead. So he faked his death to build up his power in secret. Sasuke nodded suddenly and said with disdain, humph. I feel that this guy is still far behind. You haven't even died yet, but you have already built a bigger scale than him. Sasuke, I feel like you have a lot of complaints about me in what you said. Yi Feng glanced at him and said with a strange look on his face, I'm still young, are you cursing me to death? No, you're overthinking it. Sasuke responded calmly. Sasuke, why don't you look me in the eyes before you say this? Yi Feng raised his eyebrows. Sasuke still didn't look directly at the other person, his eyes were looking at the starry sky in the distance and he changed the subject. I have one last question now, what is a toilet guard? Ellipsis ellipsis. At this moment, in the Hokage's office. I don't agree. Danzo looked around at the people around him with a gloomy look, and said in a cold tone, Shaolin Yifeng is my root ninja, why should he transfer to the Anbu directly under the Hokage? Danzo, your root's methods are not suitable for teaching talented ninjas after all. Mitoman N stood up and said kindly, let it go. I have spent all my efforts to cultivate such a talent, and you just want to let him go. Danzo looked at him sideways. Danzo, you're talking nonsense. Utane Kaharu sighed and said helplessly, how long has it been since the Kobayashi family kid joined your route? You can say that this is a talent you worked so hard to cultivate. HMPH, I don't care. Danzo snorted coldly, and said, no one can take this person away from me. Danzo. Sarutobi Hiruzen took a puff of cigarette and said calmly, are you still an organization affiliated with Konoha, the root? Am I still the Hokage of Konoha? You. Danzo really didn't expect the other party to say this. Could it be that the friendship of the past was all in vain in his eyes? It's settled. Sarutobi Hiruzen tapped his pipe and pulled out a stack of research materials from his desk drawer. Also, is this yours? The pupils in Danzo's eyes suddenly contracted, and the expression on his face became even gloomier than before. Aren't you going to explain? Sarutobi Hiruzen said in a flat voice, holding a cigarette in his mouth. I have nothing to explain. At this point, Danzo knew that no matter how much he explained, it would be useless. These research materials are top secrets of his root, and ordinary root members have no access to them. But now they appear in front of the Hokage, so there is only one possibility. The mole. The person who kept these materials betrayed him. Danzo's mind quickly locked onto the identity of the suspect, and he was filled with anger. I treated him well, but this bastard actually stabbed me in the back. From today on, you should stay at home and rest for a while. Sarutobi Hiruzen said lightly. I see. Danzo looked around and said without any sadness or joy, you have already agreed to put me under house arrest. This is something that we have no choice but to do. Look at what you have done. We're all doing this for Konoha, Danzo. Mitomonen and Utane Kaharu sighed. I'll remember this, you will regret it. Danzo said harshly and walked away. As he walked out of the Hokage building, a figure appeared behind him. Chen, go inform Yifeng. Danzo didn't look back, and gave an order with cold eyes. Tell him to send Shan Zongfang's head to my residence tomorrow. That's right. The suspect that Danzo has targeted is none other than one of his right-hand men, Yamanaka Fu. The reason is very simple, this guy is the only one who is the custodian of those research materials. Apart from Yamanaka Feng, only Danzo himself holds the key. Could he be the traitor? Hey, wake up. Yi Feng, who was sleeping soundly in the early morning, was picked up from the bed by Kushina. His hair was messy and his expression was a little dazed. What happened? Monster invasion. Who are you calling a monster, you little bastard? Kushina gave him a headbutt, with her hands on her hips. How about this, isn't it amazing? It was only then that Yi Feng realized that the red-haired lady had actually changed into a black and white maid outfit today. Moreover, it was much hotter than what the black-haired lady wore a few days ago. The collarbone under the neck was clearly visible, and the V-neck design even allowed one to see the deep cleavage on the chest. She wore a lace maid's headscarf on her head, white garter stockings on her legs, and no shoes on her feet. Yi Feng was stunned for a moment, his eyes widened. Wow, are you staring at it so intently? Kushina smiled and walked forward to hug the boy's neck, gently pulling the collar on her chest in front of him, and the trench became deeper at this moment. Master, how about treating me as your breakfast today? Let me ask you, who the hell can resist this kind of temptation? Yi Feng was about to nod, but saw Kushina reach out and gently push him out, grinning and saying, it's a bit of a pity, our master is not old enough to eat yet. Ha 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 ha. Yi Feng's face suddenly turned dark. What's even more frustrating is that what the other party said is the truth. Get dressed and wash up. You have to meet your new teacher later. Kushina blushed and kissed his lips, then, swish, she got into the soul-containing pearl. Of course she is shy too, but she just pretends to be shy most of the time. You told her to wash up, but you kissed her. Mrs. Makoto looked at her sideways, as if she was staring at a cat stealing fish. What's the big deal? Just do it if you want to. Kushina blinked and retorted, unlike some people who say one thing and mean another. What What do you mean by saying one thing and thinking another? Mrs. Makoto was stunned and her eyes became a little evasive. Still pretending. Don't think I don't know what you did last night. Kushina put her arm around her best friend's shoulders and said softly, you tried to steal my first kiss while I was asleep, and you took a long time to do it. You are not. Mrs. Makoto's face turned red when her embarrassment was exposed. If I hadn't fallen asleep, how could I have created an opportunity for you? Kushina raised an eyebrow at her and whispered, but unfortunately, your wish has failed. That little bastard's first kiss was long gone. Isn't it sad? Did you do this? Mrs. Makoto glared at her angrily. Rina, Karen's mother. Kushina spread her hands and said with a smile. Is her? Mrs. Makoto was stunned. She originally thought that her only real opponent was her best friend in front of her. But I never thought there would be a master. How can you still laugh if it's not you? Makoto turned her gaze towards her again, with a suspicious expression. Only a young girl like you would care about such things. Kushina curled her lips in disdain and said condescendingly, mature women only care about whether they can be fed. Kushina, you are so depraved. Tisk, you're not much better for understanding it in seconds, right? How many special postures have you learned from, magical girl? Shut up and don't mention it again. What about the return of Hashirama? Kushina, I now seriously suspect that you have turned into Shenzhen. The two ladies in the Yunlingzhu were chatting enthusiastically about their love and hatred for each other. Yifeng had already put on black framed glasses and came to the training ground in the East District of Konoha. With silver hair, a black mask covering his eyes, a silver-gray combat uniform and a ninja sword on his back, Hitaki Kakashi was already waiting here. Now he is still a member of Konoha's Anbu. His eyes are not as casual as in the original story. He exudes a solemn and murderous aura. Seeing Yi Feng coming, he said calmly, Hitaki Kakashi has been appointed by the Hokage as your instructor. Open black lens bracket shoes. Close black lens bracket. Yi Feng opened his mouth to introduce himself when a golden options interface suddenly popped up. This damn system just gets stuck at this time and causes trouble for me. It's really poisonous. 1. Please let Hitaki Kakashi call you, the friend of the little boy and girl. 2. Pull out a copy of the Encyclopedia of Human Mothers Illustrated Edition from behind his buttocks as a gift for the new teacher. 3. Ask your new teacher with admiration, what is it like to apply glue times a night? Damn you little boy girl, my sexual orientation is very normal, okay. What the hell is Encyclopedia of Human Mothers? It even has illustrations. Where did your damn system get such weird things from? Yi Feng was complaining in his heart, but when he saw the third option, he was stunned. 15 times of glue application in one night. Seriously. Judging from what this dog system has done in the past, it shouldn't be aimless. So in other words, this Mr. Kakashi really. Yi Feng sucked in a breath of cold air unconsciously, and the way he looked at the white-haired Anbu opposite him was as if he was looking at an Iron Waist King. Warrior. This guy is a real warrior. Can your kidneys withstand it? Yifeng wanted to ask at this time, but he finally held back. He took a deep breath and said as gently as possible, my name is Zhaolin Yifeng, please give me your guidance. With Kakashi's suspicious eyes, Yifeng reached behind his buttocks and a heavy book with a gorgeous cover appeared in his palm. This is a gift for you, teacher. Kakashi frowned and wanted to scold the other party not to do such a meaningless thing. As an Anbu ninja, you should focus on improving your own strength. Doing this kind of nonsense is simply, hiss, what is that? Kakashi swallowed the words that came to his lips, staring at the mermaid princess wearing golden shackles on the blue cover. For some unknown reason, he reached out his hand and took the Monster Girl encyclopedia. Kakashi felt something heavy, and then he realized what he had done. He turned his face away with a stiff expression, coughed twice and said, this kind of book is really too early for a child like you. I'll leave it here for now. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations on obtaining the Holy Sun Constitution. Close black lens bracket. Yi Feng was about to complain about Kakashi's insincerity when he was caught off guard by the reward from this dog system. Constitution. This damn system can also reward physical fitness. What the hell is the Holy Sun physical fitness? Only yin cannot produce life, and only yang cannot grow. Close black lens bracket. Men with this physique are naturally capable of joint cultivation, and are invincible in every battle, and when they are doing joint cultivation, they can also continuously enhance the energy accumulation of the partner, promoting mutual progress. Female creatures that come into contact with your skin will likely enter a trance, and your learning talent will be greatly enhanced. Unbelievable. Yi Feng was so shocked by the reward that he stood there in shock. Innate ability to cultivate together. Probability of entering trance through skin contact. Now I've really become a succubus in the ninja world, right? The key is that I am not old enough. What use is there for this ability? You are just messing with people's mentality, you bastard. Yi Feng, it's getting late. As if because he was taking a favor, Kakashi's attitude towards him became much more enthusiastic. Are you ready? Yes, teacher Kakashi. Yi Feng took a breath and shook off the messy and strange thoughts in his mind. Before we officially start, there is one question that needs to be clarified. In addition to illusion and swordsmanship, what else are you good at? You know a little bit about it. Fire, earth, wind, water, and lightning. These 5 types of ninjutsu. I seem to know a little bit about them all. Really? Yi Feng-kun seems a little overconfident. Kakashi pulled out the ninja sword from behind and narrowed his eyes and said, in that case, how about we have a practical lesson today? It is a good thing for young people to be confident, but excessive confidence can lead to trouble. Kakashi had an inexplicable sense of mission at this time. He wanted to correct the young genius in front of him. Dark Cave. Heibaiju, wearing a black robe with red clouds, emerged from the ground, looked around and asked, where's Obito? I don't know. Ah Fei, who was squatting in the corner writing and drawing, glanced at it and said lightly, maybe it's gluing it. Use glue. Black Zetsu was obviously stunned for a moment, his expression a little confused. Yes. Ah Fei stopped what he was doing, stood up and said, a hot-blooded young man carrying 2 clams. I mean, the corpse of his beloved girl, went into the room. What else could it be except for glue? One cannot, at least one should not. The corners of Heiju's mouth twitched violently, and he instinctively felt that Ah Fei was talking nonsense. Which normal person can beat a mutilated corpse? This is beyond the bottom line of humanity. But think about it carefully, is Obito's divine gold considered normal? Moreover, that guy went into the room alone with Nohara Rin's body and hasn't come out yet. It really makes people wonder what he did in there. Unlike Black Zetsu's deep thoughts, White Zetsu's true self was excited. I've never seen a human playing glue before, let's go and see. Forget it, there's no need. Black Zetsu shook his head and said, that guy has been very tense lately, it would be good to let him vent. Vent what? As they were talking, Obito, wearing a black cloak, appeared in front of everyone. Are you done? Black Zetsu looked him over and felt that the boy was indeed a little depressed. Take care of yourself. Shut up, my business has nothing to do with you. Obito thought that he had been discovered crying in front of Rin for a whole night, and he suddenly became a little angry and embarrassed. Is this guy admitting it in disguise? Black Zetsu took a deep breath and even looked at Obito with a bit of awe. He could actually do such a thing. Did I underestimate him before? Did Uchiha Itachi attack Kobayashi Ifang? Obito didn't notice this, mainly because Black Zetsu's dark face made it difficult to discern his expression. According to Itachi himself, they just stopped at that point. Black Zetsu looked at him and said in a low voice, the main reason is that Orochimaru actually interfered. HMPH, that's fine. Obito looked down at him and said in a cold tone, let the White Zetsu clone send a notice to Shaolin Yifang. If he dares to refuse to join us, his death will come. Obito, I think. Black Zetsu wanted to say that this was a bit inappropriate, but Obito interrupted him with a wave of his hand, no need to say more. Even without Shaolin Yifang, the Moon Eye project can be completed as usual. Okay, you've grown wings now, right? Black Zetsu took a deep breath, and his dissatisfaction with the partner in front of him increased a little. Of course it could be seen that Obito made this decision just to vent his anger, and he didn't even want to act anymore. But to be honest, it wasn't Shaolin Yifeng's fault. People don't know that Nohara Lin is your dream lover, so aren't you being a little petty by doing this? Of course. Even though he was very unhappy in his heart, Black Zetsu did not show it on his face. When choosing between Kobayashi Yifeng and Obito, he chose the latter. In Black Zetsu's eyes, Kobayashi Yifeng, who has no bloodline, can only be a stepping stone no matter how well he gets along with it. At this moment, at the eastern training ground of Konoha. So, sister, you put on the maid outfit because you lost the bet with Mrs. Makoto? Yifeng asked curiously in his heart. Yes. Kushina's voice was very cheerful, and she didn't seem upset at all because of losing the bet. I really didn't expect that even at this point, Danzo still didn't doubt you. Not only did he not doubt you, he even asked you to personally eliminate his most capable subordinate. With this operation, Kushina really wanted to give Danzo a 6. I suddenly realized, Kushina, you lost on purpose, didn't you? Mrs. Makoto's suspicious voice sounded. Maybe you really didn't expect Danzo to order Yifeng to get rid of Yamanaka Feng, but you definitely know that Danzo would never doubt Yifeng-kun. Oh. Then what's the purpose of me losing on purpose? Kushina asked with a smile. You just want to seduce me by wearing that maid outfit. Mrs. Makoto blurted out. The word, seduce, is not used properly, it should be called interest. Kushina blinked and said indifferently, but it's normal for an old mother like you not to understand. Old mother. Mrs. Makoto was stunned for a moment, and the corners of her mouth twitched as she said, if we really count the ages, I don't seem to be much older than you, am I? It's a pity that her life has been frozen at the age of 24. Kushina spread her hands and said with a smile, how old was Makoto? Oh, old mother's 35. Is this how you calculate it? Mrs. Makoto was annoyed, caught off guard by Kushina's unethical age calculation. Ahem. Yifeng coughed lightly and interrupted, Sister, how is Miss Nohara Lin now? I told her everything I should say. The little girl is a little depressed now. Kushina put away her smile and sighed, wait 2 more days and let her relax on her own. Can also understand. In Nohara Rin's impression, Obito is a sincere boy who is willing to sacrifice for his friends. He was kind, honest, and friendly, but now he suddenly turned into a bad guy who killed his teacher and his wife and did all kinds of bad things. This strong contrast was naturally difficult for the young girl who had just recovered to accept. What's more, Obito's current dark transformation is directly related to her. This made Nohara Lin feel even more uncomfortable, and she even felt self-blaming and guilty. Swish. Just as Yifeng was talking to the 2 ladies in the Yunling Pearl, a blade light wrapped in lightning swept past his side. Click. The wooden stake was split in 2, breaking into 2 very even pieces. Kakashi's left eye had turned scarlet. He looked at the wooden stake on the ground and gasped, you can even block something like this. Shaolin Yifeng, you are really a scary boy. But it's a pity that I am not weak either. He instantly distanced himself from her and quickly formed seals with his hands. Earth escape. Rock and stone spear. A several meter long rock spear condensed in front of Kakashi and shot out. With a huff sound, it pierced through a fallen leaf and flew into the distance. Kushina's mouth twitched slightly as she watched Kakashi's funny scene of fighting against the void, and she sighed. The ability of Kyoka Suigetsu is really shocking no matter how many times I see it. Once you get hit, you're basically done for, there's no solution. It seems that Mr. Kakashi is enjoying himself. Yifeng's mouth curled up slightly, and a ball of blue lightning appeared in the palm of his right hand. But it's almost time, let's end it here. Changing his body shape, Yifeng suddenly appeared in front of Kakashi. This is... Looking at the lightning condensed in the opponent's hand, Kakashi was shocked and said, Reikiri. He had only demonstrated this technique twice in front of the other party, but he had learned it so quickly. What a fuss! Is this kind of learning speed really possible for humans? Thoughts flashed through his mind, and Kakashi retreated. He swung the ninja sword forward and slashed it horizontally, startling a large number of flying birds. Swish! As expected, the ninja sword was placed on Yifeng's shoulder, and Yifeng's right hand, which was wrapped in lightning, was placed on Kakashi's waist. That's amazing. I guess I can't teach you anymore. Kakashi put away his sword and said frankly. I had heard from the Hokage before that the boy in front of me was an incredible genius. At the age of 10, he had created an illusion of the level of Mirror Flower and Water Moon. Kakashi didn't care at first. He was also a genius and had created Chidori and Reikiri. It was not until he actually started teaching that Kakashi realized that using the word genius to describe the boy in front of him was really too conservative. Evildoer. This guy is simply a complete monster. No matter what level of ninjutsu, one can master it immediately by copying it twice, and even combat experience is accumulated and stacked rapidly. To be honest, Kakashi has never seen such a monster in his life. What did you say? In the Hokage's office, Sarutobi Hiruzen looked at Kakashi in front of him with surprise and said, Yifeng has learned your Reikiri. Reikiri is defined as an S-level lightning ninjutsu, and it's only been less than a morning. And you've already learned it. It is like this, Hokage-sama. Kakashi lowered his head and said respectfully, Yifeng is a very talented child. It would be misleading for a mediocre subordinate like me to continue to teach him. There's no need to belittle yourself like that, Kakashi. Sarutobi Hiruzen blew out a puff of smoke and said earnestly, in my eyes, you have always been the genius boy who graduated with honors at the age of 5. Third generation, You still haven't let go of the obsession in your heart, right? Kakashi opened his mouth to say something, but was interrupted by Sarutobi Hiruzen, who said, I believe that if Obito and Rin are still alive, they would not want to see you torturing yourself like this. Yes, I will come out as soon as possible. Kakashi was silent for a moment and said in a low voice. This is not the Hokage's order, Kakashi. Sarutobi Hiruzen reached out and patted his shoulder, and said softly, it's just that an old man who is about to die doesn't want to see his outstanding juniors go to extremes. The future of Konoha still depends on you. I understand. Kakashi nodded with an unmoved expression. Since you don't want to continue to teach Yifeng, I won't force you. Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled kindly, looked out the window and said, I just hope you can give me some advice. Who do you think is more suitable to be the teacher of that child? Sarutobi Hiruzen hoped that the candidate proposed by Kakashi would be him, the Hokage, so that he could naturally accept a fourth apprentice. He has the potential to surpass the 3 ninjas. No wonder Danzo was so stubborn and unwilling to let him go. I'm afraid this old fellow also wanted to accept a disciple, but he was too embarrassed to say it directly, so he has been dragging it on until now. What a pity. But it's better this way. How can a truly talented ninja teach that old guy? It's what he deserves as the Hokage. If you let me judge, I think Yifeng is more suitable for medical ninjutsu. Kakashi suddenly spoke up, interrupting the inner thoughts of his own Hokage. Medical ninjutsu. Sarutobi Hiruzen's expression was a little dull. This proposal obviously did not meet his expectations. Yes. Kakashi nodded solemnly, and said sincerely, Yi Fengjun is a gentle and humble person, and he has a very strong interest in medical ninjutsu. Is this Yi Feng's own idea, or your personal conclusion? Sarutobi Hiruzen whispered. Kakashi glanced at the bulging bag on his waist and said solemnly, that's Yi Fengjun's idea, and it's also my conclusion. I understand. Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded and waved his hand, saying, you go down first, Kakashi. His tone and expression were obviously not as enthusiastic as before, and he was secretly blaming the young man for not knowing how to deal with things. I had hinted so clearly, but this guy just said, very interested in medical ninjutsu. He was deliberately making things difficult for an old man like me, right? Where can Konoha find such a suitable teacher now? Sarutobi Hiruzen stared at Kakashi's departing back and took 2 puffs of his cigarette. While he was lost in thought, he suddenly saw the blue cover and the image of the mermaid princess revealed in the other's bag. His eyes suddenly widened. Sarutobi Hiruzen made a gesture with his hand and said loudly, "Wait, Kakashi. In your bag." "Who Kai?" Before he could finish his words, Kakashi suddenly accelerated and sprinted, disappearing from Sarutobi Hiruzen's sight like a gust of wind. The setting sun, in the evening. In Yifeng's small house, the members of the class reunion were eating heartily. It seemed that because of the relationship with the competitors, everyone behaved like starving ghosts, and the various dishes on the table began to be cleared away visibly. However, if we really talk about the number one in eating ability, it must be the seemingly weak Hinata. While others were still debating whether to eat the second bowl of rice, the eldest daughter of the Hyuga family had already quietly finished her 8th bowl. The Ino girl sitting next to her was stunned, and she took a breath and said, "You are really worthy of me, Hinata-chan." This scene was not the first time, but it still shocked her. I. Hinata was obviously a little embarrassed by what she said, her cheeks slightly red as she said, "I'm sorry." "No need to apologize, I'm just expressing my feelings." Ino smiled at her and lowered her voice and said, "Come to think of it, Hinata-chan actually likes Yifeng-kun, right?" The blush on Hinata's cheeks widened again, and white steam began to appear on her head. "Don't be shy, we are on the same path." Ino patted her shoulder in a friendly manner and whispered, "But there is a big problem now. The enemy we are facing may not be simple." "Enemy?" Hinata suppressed her inner shame and showed a curious expression on her face. "You should know by now that Yifengjun often goes on blind dates, right? Those blind date candidates are our biggest enemies. Do you want to see those unknown bad women snatch Yifengjun away?" "No, I don't want to." God knows how much effort Hinata put into saying these 2 words, her little fists were clenched tightly. "How about we form an alliance?" Ino stretched out her hand and said sincerely, "First drive those hateful bad women out, and then compete fairly. This will make Yifengjun hate it, right?" Hinata looked a little hesitant. "Don't worry, we won't hurt anyone." Ino forcefully held Hinata's small hand, smiled confidently and said, "We'll just use our charm to make them retreat." "Did you hear that, Makoto?" Kushina, who was holding the spirit pearl, stared at the scene, her lips slightly curved as she said, "Young girls nowadays are really amazing. They actually want us to give up when we see difficulty. It's really scary. After all, we are both mothers." Mrs. Makoto clearly meant something and said with pretended worry, "But we can't compete with girls of the same age." Yifeng didn't say anything, pretending not to hear and continued correcting homework in the small room. Swish. Kushina suddenly appeared without warning, and put one arm around Yifeng's neck. At the same time, she stretched out her other hand and gently waved to Ino, who was secretly observing Yifeng's situation. Ino was stunned for a moment, her mouth slightly open. "What's wrong with you, Ino?" Hinata noticed that her expression was not right and looked in the direction she was looking. "Nothing unusual." Yifeng sat at his desk, chin in his hand, seemingly lost in thought. I just saw." Just as Ino was about to explain to Hinata, the beautiful red-haired woman appeared again. She kissed the boy she liked hard, and her body suddenly disappeared in a flash of light. "Yes, there's a ghost." "A ghost? Huh?" Hinata blinked, looking confused. At this time, the other students were also attracted and looked towards Ino. A red-haired woman. Ino became visibly nervous, and even began to gesture with her hands and feet. She suddenly appeared next to Yifengjun, and then she did this. "What's this like?" Naruto scratched his face, full of question marks. "Ah. Didn't you see it just now?" Ino pointed at where Yifeng was and took a breath and said, turn into a black-haired ghost." Sasuke understood now, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. "Ino, are you tired?" Sakura put her hand on her forehead with a worried look on her face and said softly, "How about I take you back home to rest early?" Looking at the confused expressions on the faces of the people around her, Even Ino herself began to doubt herself. Could it be that she was really too tired from doing the homework and had hallucinations? The moment Ino was supported by Sakura and was about to walk out of the hut, she looked back again in confusion. The two ladies, one with red hair and the other with black hair, stood on either side of Yifeng and waved to her as if they were seeing her off. The evening breeze blows and the night falls. The members of the class reunion have already left Yifeng's cottage and gone their separate ways. Only Sasuke remained where he was, with his hands in his pockets, looking at Yifeng and saying, "You actually let someone else's mother dress up as a ghost to scare people, you are such a bad guy. Does Sasuke think I was the one who instigated this?" Yifeng's lips curled slightly, and he chuckled. Why can't it be that Mrs. Makoto thought it was funny, so she ran out on her own? Nonsense, my mother would never do such a boring thing. Sasuke said indignantly. Boring things. Yifeng shook his head gently and sighed. So to you, Mrs. Makoto is just a gentle, virtuous, traditional and conservative housewife, right? It seems that as a child, you really don't know your mother well enough. Ridiculed. He, Uchiha Sasuke, was actually mocked by an outsider for not understanding his mother, and the key point was that he had no way to refute it. When it comes to how well he knows his mother, he's probably not as good as the young man in front of him. After all, the other party has already been with his mother. It's so frustrating. Although we are of the same age, I always feel that I am shorter than him because of my mother. Let's go, Sasuke. Yifeng didn't say anything heartbreaking at this time. He raised his hand and slapped the wall. Click. The ground opened up on both sides, revealing a deep passage. It's time to take you to see our latest research results. As he spoke, Yifeng glanced outside the door of the cabin, with the corners of his mouth slightly curled up. Underground base. It was the same layout that Sasuke was familiar with, but there was a huge hexagonal platform in the center. Yifeng appeared in the middle of the platform in a flash and waved to Sasuke. Want to test your current combat strength? Sasuke, who was originally observing his surroundings, was stunned for a moment, and said with a frown, I will fight with you. Although he is arrogant, he is not stupid. The abilities that Yifeng has currently demonstrated have made Sasuke realize that the two of them are not from the same dimension at all. If a real fight breaks out, he'll just be abused anyway, so what's the point? Don't worry, I've found a suitable sparring partner for you. Yifeng smiled and raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Squeak. There was an opening in the center of the hexagonal platform, and a slender figure in a long white windbreaker slowly emerged from the lift. Sasuke's eyes widened, and his pupils suddenly contracted. It's you, Uchiha Shisui. That's right. The man in front of him was none other than the Uchiha genius who had always snatched his brother from him when they were little, making him so angry that he cried. Sasuke really didn't expect that even he was resurrected by Yifeng. Long time no see, Sasuke-kun. Shisui smiled and said softly, you have grown so big. Your face. Sasuke only noticed at this time that both sides of Shisui's face below his forehead were covered with thick-looking white bone objects, like a white helmet covering his face. Are you surprised? This is the symbol of the Urankar. Shisui explained nonchalantly. Urankar. Sasuke looked confused. The ninja's soul is combined with the power of the hollow created by the leader. This stage is called hollowification. Shisui pointed to the bone mask on his face and said lightly, if you can regain your rationality and the meaning of existence after hollowification, you will become an Urankar like me. Is that so? Sasuke looked moved and gasped. You don't have to hide anymore. Shisui smiled and glanced at the entrance of the passage. Since you are the leader's classmate, you are our guest. You really got it right, Ino. Shikamaru's helpless voice sounded. There really is a ghost hiding in Yifeng's house, and it's not just an ordinary ghost. Led by him, all the members of the class reunion walked down the stairs. Looking at the huge underground base in front of them, their faces were full of shock and dullness. Hey, am I dreaming? Naruto trembled and asked in disbelief, is this still Konoha? Yifeng, that guy, really gave us a big surprise without making any noise. Shikamaru's mouth twitched slightly, and he sighed, Now it's good, we all have to become accomplices. What accomplice? Xiaoying looked around and suddenly had a bad feeling in her heart. Yifeng Jun, what exactly is he going to do? Subvert the existing system and create a brand new world. Sasuke stood on the platform and said without any sadness or joy, since you have read the textbook, don't you understand the situation? Great, what a great ideal. Ino said with admiration. If it's Yifeng Jun, I think it will succeed. Hinata said with a firm expression. This old system also includes Konoha. Are you really ready? Sasuke looked down at them and said calmly, if you decide to quit now, it's not too late. Yifeng, are you going to destroy Konoha? Naruto's eyes widened with surprise, and he asked, why? He did learn a lot during the time he joined the class reunion, and the identity of Hokage no longer had the same filter in his eyes. But this does not mean that he would agree with destroying Konoha. It's not about destroying Konoha, it's about destroying the old system that exists in Konoha. Shikamaru patted his shoulder and explained, there is a difference between the two. But this will ultimately make us an enemy of Konoha, right? Sakura asked in a panic. She was just playing the ghost-catching game with her best friend, so how did she become Konoha's enemy out of nowhere? So, why? Naruto still couldn't understand, and asked loudly, has Konoha done anything wrong to Yifeng? That's not what you're asking. Shisui's expression was gentle, and he smiled, the leader simply couldn't stand it. Look, you don't like it. Naruto had a dull look on his face. Yeah, I can't stand it. Shisui looked up at the ceiling, with an inexplicable expression, and said, he couldn't stand seeing the Uchiha old and young, women and children being slaughtered like cattle and sheep, nor could he stand seeing the Konoha high-level officials taking human lives lightly and laughing it off, and he couldn't stand seeing a hero's son like you, Naruto-kun, being treated like pigs and dogs. Huh. Naruto is the son of a hero. Are you kidding me? Ino and Sakura were both surprised. I am. Naruto was even more shocked, pointing his finger at himself and his body trembled slightly. Uzumaki Naruto, your last name comes from your mother Uzumaki Kushina. Shisui looked at him and said bluntly, and your father is the fourth Hokage, Namikaze Minato. Sluggish. Except for Shikamaru, all the members of the class reunion were in a daze. This boy who drinks expired milk every day and is treated like a rat by his neighbors is actually the son of the fourth Hokage. So, it's not that the leader wants to be the enemy of Konoha. Shisui said solemnly, it's the corruption and filthiness of the old system that is destroying all those who love Konoha. Only by completely overthrowing it can our home become a better place. Silence. As Shisui finished speaking, the reunion members all looked thoughtful. With Naruto as a living example before them, it would be difficult for them to find excuses even if they wanted to say a few good words for Konoha. I never thought that Shisui had such a talent for public speaking. In the laboratory of the underground base, Mrs. Makoto's face was full of admiration, and her two little hands casually rested on Yifeng's shoulders. Why don't you just hug him? What's the point of doing this? Kushina sat on Yifeng's lap and pouted, if you're not brave enough, how are you going to take maternity leave in the future? Maternity leave. Mrs. Makoto was stunned on the spot, her whole face flushed red to her ears. Not to mention her, even Yifeng couldn't hold it in at this time, and the corners of his mouth twitched violently. My elder sister is becoming more and more uninhibited in her words. She even said, maternity leave. Chief, can you hear me? The voice of White Zetsu 007 came from the surveillance communicator. Yes, you say. Yifeng said gently. That ungrateful Uchiha Obito wants you to join his army, and he said that if you don't join, you won't live past tomorrow. White Zetsu 007 paused here and said, do you want me and Afei to find a way to kill him? No need. Yifeng chuckled and said calmly, please tell Obito that I will meet with him in the Valley of the End in a week. 2 days later, Takanon village. Yifeng stood in front of the waterfall, feeling the morning breeze, with a comfortable expression on his face. Lord Chief. The portable communicator on her wrist flashed blue light, and Mrs. Rina, with a teardrop mole under her eye, appeared on the screen. White Zetsu 058 and 070 have already contacted the 3rd Tsuchikage Onoki, and he is planning to order short-distance communication devices from us at a price of million ryo. The so-called short-distance communication device is simply a walkie-talkie. But considering the particularity of the ninja world, Yifeng deliberately changed it into a style that is easy to hide. I see. 40 million taels is a very suitable price. Yifeng nodded and asked softly, besides the communication device, have other products not been sold? According to Onoki's original words, their Iwagakure village only needs strategic supplies right now. Mrs. Rina shook her head, and her bangs on her forehead swayed gently. Strategic. Yifeng curled up his lips into a mocking smile, and said lightly, it seems that Onoki is determined to attack Konoha during the Chunin exams. He wants to kill people and make rivers of blood flow. Shaolin Yifeng. A cold voice sounded from behind Yifeng, saying, I didn't expect you to be so punctual. After all, this is the first time I've completed a mission assigned by the organization. It would be rude if I were late. Yifeng turned around and said with a smile, you should think so, too, right, Kakuzu-senpai? That's right. Standing in front of Yifeng was Kakuzu, dressed in a black robe with red clouds. His 1.85-meter tall stature formed a sharp contrast with Yifeng, who was less than 1.5 meters tall. What a pity. Kakuzu looked down at him with his emerald green eyes, and sneered playfully, I wanted to use my lateness as an excuse to tear you into pieces. Oh my, this is really surprising. Yifeng turned off the communicator on his wrist and said with a leisurely smile, did I save my life because of my punctuality? It's just a temporary life, kid. Kakuzu stared at him and said in a cold tone, you'd better stay alert throughout this mission. There is no Nagato and Konan to protect you in this village. Although his tone was full of threats, Yifeng responded sincerely, yes, thank you Kakuzu-senpai for your warning. Boom. Just as he finished his words, an extremely powerful chakra energy suddenly rose from the center of Takigakure. The wind was blowing fiercely and gravel was flying everywhere. The terrifying torrent spread in all directions. Yifeng's bangs fluttered in the wind and his clothes rustled. It's worthy of being the chakra of the tailed beast. It can actually affect here. Yifeng exclaimed. It's just the aftermath of the chakra. Kakuzu looked towards the place where the chakra energy burst out and said calmly, you should be thankful that the Seven Tails is still in a semi-sealed state. As soon as he finished speaking, the escaping chakra fluctuations began to gradually weaken. Wow, it looks like the seal of the jade pot has been completed. It's our turn to carry out the mission, kid. Kakuzu jumped down from the top of the waterfall and fell to the ground with a thud. Takinoshi Village, Central Hall. The current leader of Takanen Village is Mizuhasha Shintaro, a middle-aged man with a square face. He is currently sitting in the main seat in the hall, looking a little anxious. Report, the sealing of the Seven Tails has been completed. It was not until his subordinate respectfully walked in from the side door holding a white jade jar that the head of the Takanen village relaxed his expression. He motioned the other party to place the jar in front of him, nodded slightly and said, Dongshin, how is it? Master Tushin has died of exhaustion. The subordinate lowered his head and said softly, before he died, he said that this was his fate as a Jinchuriki. Please don't blame yourself, master. Well, let's bury his remains in the back mountain. Mizuhasha Shintaro sighed deeply and gave an order. Also, let the sealing squad transfer the Seven Tails into Fu's body as soon as possible. Just as the subordinate was about to bow and accept the order, a cold voice suddenly sounded, I think this is no longer necessary. Who? Mizuhasha Shintaro was stunned and looked towards the source of the sound. The main door of the hall was violently broken open, and two figures, one tall and one short, appeared in the eyes of everyone in the hall. You are. Mizuhasha Shintaro looked at the tall man with a look of shock on his face. Kakuzu. Humph. Little brat from the Mizuhasha family, I didn't expect that even a loser like you could become the leader. Kakuzu sneered and said lightly, this village is really becoming more and more desolate. What do you want to do? Mizuhasha Shintaro instinctively protected the white jade jar in front of him and shouted angrily, "There is no place for you in this village anymore. A place to stay." Kakuzu stared at him with his emerald green eyes, and said indifferently, "That kind of thing is unnecessary to me. I came here just for the jade pot in your arms. Your target is the seven tails." Mizuhasha Shintaro took 2 steps back while holding the jade pot, and said indignantly, "This is the foundation of our Takigakure village, I will never give it to you. You little brat from the Mizuhasha family, do you think you can stop me?" Kakuzu stepped forward and said coldly, "Don't come over here." Mizuhasha Shintaro nervously pressed the lid on the jade pot and gritted his teeth and said, "Otherwise I will unseal it now and we will all perish together." "Humph, I also want to see how the Takigakure village is destroyed by the 7 tails that I have worshipped for decades." Kakuzu said calmly, "But do you really dare? You?" Mizuhasha Shintaro opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but suddenly found that the jade pot he was holding in his arms was gone. He was stunned for a moment with a dull expression, looking around. "I saw a young man holding a jade pot in his hand not far away, and he smiled and said to me, 'Are you looking for this, sir?' This, how is this possible?" Mizuhasha Shintaro stared with disbelief on his face. "Why did the jade pot in my arms appear in the other person's hands? How did he do it?" Not to mention the leader of Takiguni village, even Kakuzu showed an incredible look at this moment. Just now, his eyes only caught a glimpse of white shadows. When he came to his senses, the jade pot had already appeared in the young man's hands. Instantaneous body movement. But he had never seen or even heard of this level of teleportation. This newcomer might not be as simple as he appears. Kakuzu muttered to himself, looking at the boy with a cautious look. "You must feel very uncomfortable to have such a huge body in such a small jar." Yi Feng seemed to be unaware of Kakuzu's gaze, and spoke to the jade pot in his palm. "Do you want to be our companion and fly freely in the sky from now on?" A big question mark appeared on Kakuzu's head, and he asked with a twitching mouth, "Shaolin Yi Feng, what are you doing?" "As you can see, Senior Kakuzu." Yi Feng glanced at him and smiled slightly, "You are trying to recruit new companions for us. Open your eyes and look, that's a tailed beast. What a fucking companion." Kakuzu didn't know how to complain about it. It seemed like there was something seriously wrong with this newcomer's mental state. "Don't do such meaningless things. The mission is completed, we can go back and report." Kakuzu spoke anxiously. He was really afraid that the young man would say something shocking again and cause something terrible. "It's not a meaningless thing." Yi Feng curled his lips and said gently, "Look, Nanao has agreed." "What agreed?" Before Kakuzu could react, he saw the young man open the lid of the jade pot without hesitation. Boom. Unparalleled chakra energy suddenly burst out and gradually condensed into the form of a large insect with 6 wings and a tail. "You ride a horse." For the first time in his life, Kakuzu wanted to curse, and his face under the mask began to distort.